Good evening. I call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council for Tuesday, October 10th to order. Welcome, Council, and Councilmember Betcher on the online. We're going to start out tonight with a proclamation for Koshu City Day. Whereas the City of Ames recognizes the value of our partner city relationship with Koshu City, Yamanashi, Japan, and whereas hundreds of Ames citizens have benefited from and formed friendships with the citizens of Koshu City through cultural and educational delegation exchanges, and whereas the relationship has held strong for 30 years, first being formalized in the fall of 1993, and whereas on October 16th and 17th of this year, Ames will have the honor of hosting an official delegation from Koshu City, including their mayor, education and business officials, and others committed to our partner city relationship. And whereas we are committed to continuing and strengthening the bond we have by adding online exchanges between our youth, commerce exchanges between our businesses, and other mutually beneficial undertakings and opportunities. Therefore, I, John A. Hala, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim Monday, October 16th, 2023, as Koshu City Day in Ames. I urge every resident to join in celebrating the 3-decade-long relationship we have with our friends in Koshu City, Yamanashi, Japan. And I'd like to introduce Cindy Hicks, president of our Ames International Partner City Association, and ask her to share a few comments about what's going to happen next week.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. I would like to start off by saying that in the world that we are in today, citizen-to-citizen diplomacy is more important than ever before. We can't count on our federal government sometimes to put forth the hand of friendship. And so it's upon us as American citizens to do that. And I am very proud to live in a city where that is of utmost importance, where we welcome people from different countries, from different nationalities, from different cultures, and we put forth that hand of friendship. And so I thank you for that. So next week, we will have a delegation of 10 people from Koshu City, Japan. They are the superintendent of schools, our Mayor Suzuki of Koshu. His birthday happens to be on October 16th, which we declared Koshu City Day, so that'll be an extra added bonus for him. Several members of their international committee and several members of their city council, along with Chamber of Commerce people. We are looking to create a new bond with them that goes beyond education and culture and reaches into commerce and business. We will give them our best tour of Ames. A lot of people have put a lot of time into this and energy and volunteerism, and so we really look forward to it. I hope that you can join us on the evening of October 16th for our celebration of 30 years. It will be at the Prairie Moon Winery. And then they will also be here at City Hall. They will meet with downtown business owners to look at places where maybe their wares could be sold, and at businesses that might want to create a niche market in Koshu City. And then on Tuesday, we will take them to the middle school. As we've said, there have been hundreds of middle school students who have made the trip to Japan, stayed with families there, made connections, and there have been reciprocated students from Koshu who have made the same trip. And so we look forward to showing them our middle school. We will take them to Iowa State University. Koshu City is a big wine producing area, and they will go through our food science building. They will get to see our wine production facility and brewery. The dean of the College of Ag and Life Sciences will take time out of his schedule to talk to them. You know, it's definitely a topic that could be a collaboration. And so that's what we're looking for is collaborations with them. And then we will end the evening with an all-American barbecue at my house. So I think it'll be a very quick 2 days. You might wonder, well, why would they just give 2 days? This is their harvest season. They have a very short window of time where they can harvest their fruits for their wines and other things. And just the fact that they are giving up a little bit of that time to come and meet with us and celebrate 30 years of friendship is very meaningful. And so I thank you. And I hope that you can be involved. And I hope that you have as good of an experience with them here as we had with them when we went there. Thank you.
I just want to recognize too, Cindy's done an awful lot of work, and her committee has too. It's a lot of balls in the air, but thank you, Cindy, on behalf of the council for your efforts, and looking forward to next week. So, all right, we will move on to consent. Does anyone want to pull any item from consent this evening? Gloria, is there any item you want to pull?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, entertain a motion to approve consent.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to public forum. This is the time we set aside for members of the public to address City Council on items of topics of city business. Is there anyone who wants to address council this evening? Richard?
Can I love and honor you today somehow? I mean, it's like I don't know. I mean, we're all married to each other. I want to be divorced from a lot of the things that go on in this society, even in this town. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. You know, I want to begin. It's like I was asking people to spend a day with me sunrise to sunset so I could get to know them. They could get to know me. We could build the world a better place one day at a time. You know, I've asked them, the first person I asked that to was a police officer who was going to arrest me for handing out some of my writings in front of the post office. He sat down and talked with me for about an hour and a half until he had more official business to do with the city, and then said, "Thank you, go on." And I mean, people had given me business cards to go to churches. It's like churches don't pay a single penny in taxes, but I wasn't raised in a church. And it's like one church told me I was a member for life the first time I went there, but 6 months later they called the police on me, and they told the police, God only knows what, but they were telling me that I should form my own church and leave them out of it. You know, you're better than God, you're better than Jesus, you're better than I am. It doesn't take much to be better than me. And they wouldn't spend a day with me, but a journalism student from Iowa State spent a day with me and told me to carry a sign that said, "Let me be naked for a month." I carried that sign for 3 months, and it's in my window in my apartment. And
Richard, do you have any items of city business tonight? Thank you. Anybody else want to address council under public forum? See none, we will move on to item number 26, person acceptance of credit and debit cards by customer service. Good evening, Corey.
Good evening. Tonight, we're here to talk about the in-person acceptance of credit and debit cards by customer service. And I have John Odenweller with me tonight to talk about that. He's the utility account supervisor. So roughly about a year ago, the city staff provided some information on the acceptance of credit cards at our customer service division. That's staff is built at the front door on the east side of the building. Right now, we accept many forms of payments there. We take cash and check. We also, of course, have the drop box that was recently placed there. But one of the things we didn't offer was the acceptance of credit cards. And so, unfortunately, we were forced to turn people away if they showed up with a credit card. And sometimes people do go to great lengths to get down here. And unfortunately, we didn't accept that form of payment. So over the last, year, John did some work and research and found that our current financial software provides a solution. We went back and kind of negotiated with them on some of the possibilities. And ultimately, what we came up with was we felt like the best solution was a fixed fee of $3 for in-person payments. And as part of that, they were willing to give us 2 credit card readers at no cost, typically at $600 or so. So really, I think, though, the focus was how can we provide another avenue of payment for citizens who come down to meet with our staff, and then unfortunately we're forced to turn them away. So there is a cap as part of that because it's $3 and it's a fixed fee. There's a cap of $450. So we wouldn't want somebody coming and paying $10,000 with the $3 fixed fee. Obviously, there's some charges from credit card companies and financial institutions. So that's a big component of it. And so that's the reason for the fixed fee. Additionally, we do charge you can pay online by credit card, which is another avenue for payment. That fee is $3.50. That's been in place for several years, I believe.
Yeah, as long as I can remember.
Through a different vendor. That contract's up, I think, in 9 months or so. So we'll reconsider that possibility and possible integration at that time too. But that's just some general background of why we're here today, and just looking for some guidance on possibility of accepting credit cards.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
So is there such a thing, Corey, as best practices about how our peer communities are handling these things?
Yeah, John, I think John did some good research on that. Most of the people are passing along the fees to customers. And I think, as was noted in the council action form, the problem is integrating it into your rates and who pays for the cost. So if I'm a customer paying by cash, is it fair for me to pay a portion of my rate to cover a credit, somebody paying by credit card? So just I think, in all fairness, that's traditionally what other utilities have done in the areas. And probably across the country is pass that fee along to the customer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question I have, just talk to us just a little bit about security. Everyone's concerned about how that information is being guarded. Can you just give us a little thumbnail sketch about what we do to protect our resident credit card information?
Absolutely. So this will actually be a card reader from our current vendor, that will just upload right into the software. So we will never hold any information. It will always be encrypted and protected in that manner. But we will never house any information ourselves that could potentially be hacked or taken of any sort. And PCI compliance rules, they're in place, and we have to abide by them, or the vendor has to abide by them, and they go through an annual audit to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Gloria, any questions on this one?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we'll open up public comment. Does anyone who wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Is there a motion?
Move approval of the resolution?
Second.
Okay.
The alternative one, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thanks for coming. All right, moving on. Item 27, accessory dwelling unit public outreach summary. Kelly.
Good evening, Council. Eloise is going to walk through a presentation and outlining the summary of the public input and rehash some of those details that are in the staff report. But overall, I think we had a fairly positive engagement process, in the sense that we ended up with contact with over 300 people. We had over 180 individual survey responses. when we approached the outreach, we really wanted it to be more about the specifics of the standards, not about just general, do you like ADUs or not? So that was how we designed the outreach. You may have saw some comments, where do I just say I don't want this to happen? Well, that comment still made it to you, but we were definitely trying to get input on the understanding of ADUs, the acceptance of those in the community, as well as how the standards may actually work. In general, we thought from the feedback we got that it was hard to land on whether the standards were too strict or too permissive. And our recommendation is, as you've seen in the report, is essentially we should go forward with the standards as drafted, unless council has some specific interest they picked up in those comments that we can address for you and do that. So I'm going to give it over to Eloise to walk through this, and then we'll have discussion with council.
Kelly, before we starts, we have some honored guests here from a Boy Scout troop, it looks like, and they may not know what ADU stands for or what you're even talking
Sure.
about. So maybe you could give
Sure.
a 2-minute backdrop on what this is.
Absolutely. So City Council earlier this year talked about how do we add housing to the community on already developed lots. So one of the concepts for doing that is to add a second unit to a property. So we can call those accessory dwelling units. They can be called mother-in-law units. They have a lot of different names, but essentially it's a small little house on the same property as a larger house. Currently, you can't do that in the city, and we're looking at can we add those in a compatible manner into existing areas and let property owners have that option for their properties.
Great, thanks. Eloise?
Good evening. So I'm just gonna.
Maybe you could have
through-
the mic a little closer to her.
I'm gonna go through a quick presentation to lead you through the agenda, the staff report the council action form, that we've already provided you with. So just a back story of where we are to date. You may recall on the left is all of the city council workshops and different activities giving direction on this project. Additionally, we met with the Planning and Zoning Commission twice. One was talking about infill in May, and then more recently with the presentation, just talking about the standards and the public outreach. We also met with the Historic Preservation Commission on September 11th, and then our staff outreach efforts really got underway in a strong effort in August and continued through early October. But during July, we were getting ready. And so we got the webpage prepared. This is an example of the webpage with the links that it included. So you could see it included all the regulations. It gave a description of what an accessory dwelling unit is. It talked about the schedule. There's a link to the brochure. There's a link to the ADU survey and also the duplex survey, and information on prior events and meetings that people could link to if they wanted more information, frequently asked questions, and then a way to stay in touch. With that, we had lots of other opportunities as well. We had direct or indirect contact with about 325 people. That was through the online survey and through our open house and eco fair activities. But additionally, with that, there was the webpage, there was a brochure that was passed out at open house activities. It was made available outside of the planning and housing offices. There was a city-side article, and I think that was quite effective in getting people to know about it from the get-go and to know about the open house opportunities. We contacted the neighborhood groups. Susan did 2 press releases and lots of social media pushes. And Kelly spoke on the radio twice. So we had lots of different ways we tried to get the word out to people. This is an example of what the brochure looked like that was passed out. We had 187 responses to the survey. That takes us right through October 5th, which was Thursday. So 78.6% of single-family homeowners, 78.6% of the respondents were single-family homeowners within Ames. 79.9% 75.94% were familiar with ADUs already, and 42.24%, or 79 respondents, indicated an interest in possibly building an ADU within the next 3 years. One of the highlights of the survey was that the highest areas on this map of participation were the areas C, D, and E, which is expected actually. Additionally, 62.34% of the respondents did not believe that the draft standards were an impediment to building an ADU, and 71.69% did not think they were incompatible with neighboring properties. The most frequently stated impediment was the requirement to add one parking space in order to have an ADU. It's most problematic if the property has a 1-car garage. If there's already a 2-car garage, it's not an impediment because they can accommodate the parking without having 3 cars in tandem. The most frequent incompatibility concern had to do with the space, the lot size, and privacy. So some of that has to do with the setbacks, some of that has to do with the size of the lot, the percentage of the rear yard, and so forth. But what was most interesting, I think, was that in looking at the proposed regulations, this was the balance of responses. So as Kelly already mentioned, it was pretty equally balanced. And the highest was that people felt it was a fair balance between being too stringent and too permissive. So this is just some standards and considerations. We provided this to people at the open house. We saw these as possible obstacles for people, and a lot of it had to do with spatial concerns, things they might want to think about as needing to be thought about before they delved into the idea of adding an ADU. And so, of course, the first one is if you live in a subdivision with private covenants, it's likely that they are prohibited. And the addition of a parking space is something to seriously consider as well as the 25% of the rear yard with the existing accessory buildings. So some of the zoning issues that need to be resolved is within Chapter 31, Old Town. Old Town is regulated by Chapter 31, and there's both design standards and design criteria. And it talks about garages, but we recommend, as recommended by the Historic Preservation Commission, that a few additions be added to make ADUs a little bit more able to be built in those areas. And most of it is more of a clarification than actually a huge change, because garages that have an ADU will not be required to have a porch. So if you're adding, there's a standard that you have to have a porch in for buildings within Old Town. It has not been applied to garages, obviously, but would it apply to ADUs? Well, this will clarify that if it's a garage with an ADU, it won't be required to have a porch. A 2-story minimum would not be required. A raised foundation would not be required, and flexibility related to the footprint will apply. But other design criteria that's within Old Town would still apply. So that would just eliminate a few things that would be particularly cumbersome to enforce. Additionally, within what we call SEFCOD, the Single Family Conservation District Overlay, staff, and this is shown on this map here, the Single Family Conservation Overlay District goes from basically 6th up to 11th Street between Grand and Duff. It also includes the Historic District. but there's special guidelines within that overlay district. And it does not state that they're only for the primary building. It says all buildings. So we feel that there's some opportunity to add language to that overlay district, which would exclude ADUs from the unit cap that is stated. There's a cap of 648 units that's stated for that overlay. And secondly, to exclude ADUs from the architectural standards that are listed within the compatibility section. And then that way, we think that will help to not eliminate ADUs from that area. So then some other considerations are things that were brought up just for conversation purposes, mostly because there are standard for accessory buildings. And so the idea was to apply the same standards to ADUs. So the standard of the 900 square feet is a maximum gross floor area. So that was a clarification that we had with several people to let them know that would include all floors and if there was a basement as well, to total what the gross floor area is, and it would have to be less than 900 square feet. Secondly, right now in the standards, there's a 1-bedroom limitation. So an additional room as a den, office, or other living space is not permitted. So that was a topic of conversation because some people would like to have an ADU that also would include an office, but we would not be able to allow that because an office could also be used as a bedroom. Now, just one side note is under the rental occupancy standards, a 1 and 2 bedroom allow the same maximum number of adults, which is 3. So that's just something to throw in there for your consideration. Another question that came up was, what about other habitable space? So can an ADU be built but not utilized as a dwelling? So maybe build an ADU but have it as an office space or use it as a home occupation or some other habitable space. Right now, it talks about a dwelling unit having a kitchen and a bathroom. And so possibly the requirement would be to build something with a kitchen and a bathroom, whether you use it for a dwelling or not. But I think some people would like to build an office, use it, and have a bathroom and that kind of thing. So there's rabbit holes to go down. Building height. So right now, the accessory building says that when a principal building is taller than 1 story, the height for the accessory building is a maximum of 80% of the principal building or 20 feet, whichever is lower. So what that could do is it could restrict the second floor of the accessory building. So if you were building above a garage, it might, that 80% might restrict what you're able to do. Whereas if it was allowed to be 20 feet, it would give more flexibility if that 80% portion was eliminated. Also, it might be more difficult for somebody to actually know what 80% of their building height, their principal building height is. And if it was just stated as 20 feet, that might be more clear for people.
I just want to add that 80% rule, like we said in the council action form, it's that 1.5 story house that's the question mark for people. If you have a standard 2-story house with the height of 8-9 foot floor to ceiling height and then a standard roof, the 80% is probably not going to compromise you. It's the A-frame steep pitched roof houses, and And yes, there's usable space that comes out of that. That was just that question of 80% versus 20 feet. So it's not all, it's more of a subset.
And then additionally, we anticipate some changes needing to happen to the rental code, possibly with the near campus neighborhoods, and with the Chapter 13, such things as property registration, annual verification of residency would likely be needed, transition of ownership of a rental, some of those kind of things. So the next steps would be to receive your direction. We listed 4 options. The first option being a zoning text amendment with the current proposed text, including the CEFCOD and historic district changes. The second being zoning text amendment with modified standards, if there's compelling reasons that you feel that are supported for that. And the third is council direction for additional outreach to postpone making any decision. And fourth one would be no zoning text amendment at this time. So I will conclude with that and happy to answer questions.
Thank you. All right, we'll start with Gloria. She says she has a few questions. Go ahead, Gloria.
Okay, can you hear me, staff?
Yes.
All right, my first question has to do with the 900 square feet that we have as the limit for the size of the ADU. How did we arrive at 900 square feet? That seems really large, considering that I know in my neighborhood, we actually have homes that are smaller than 900 square feet. So that seems to make accessory dwelling a misnomer for those places that have smaller houses as the partner structure.
Section 29408, parentheses 7, that deals with accessory buildings, has the maximum gross floor area of 900 square feet right now. That applies to garages or sheds or anything as a single entity that would be built in your on your property. So that's where the 900 square feet came from. There is another provision that we haven't highlighted that talks about accessory buildings being smaller than the primary structure as part of the definition.
Right. So if you had a 700 square foot house, your ADU can't be bigger than your house. But, and as we've currently written it, it must be behind the primary dwelling. So you couldn't flip it and say my principal dwelling is the bigger house in the back and the ADU is the house in the front. So the ADU must always be secondary to the primary if it is a smaller house.
I think that maybe the question might be is how did you arrive at the 900 square foot? Why isn't it like 700 or
Yeah,
why isn't it
it's one of those
500?
things where we didn't derive it. It was here since I've been here. I didn't look into the history. 900 square feet's a lot. It's much larger than a 3-car garage. It is definitely a large number, but it's been around for a while.
Okay.
We could look into that, but I don't have that on the tip of my tongue.
Okay. Answer your question, Gloria.
Okay, one more question, and that is, with the assumption that we're going to have owners living in the primary dwelling, what's our mechanism for ensuring that? Who's doing this annual verification, and what does the verification entail?
All good questions. Some of those I don't have answers for yet. The verification process will have to be through the letter of compliance process. There's no other permit that you have with the city to live in a house. So it's only if you're renting the property will we have to enable some check on that owner residency requirement. Exactly what that means right now, I don't know, but it's something that has to be dealt with when we go forward adopting the ordinances, and exactly how that's done in the rental code, we'll have to bring that to you as a code amendment.
So theoretically, a family member, like if we were using this as a a granny flat in the backyard could be living there not as a renter, and there would not be a requirement for annual verification because the rental code is probably going to be our means of knowing who to verify.
Yeah, absent some other direction, I was presuming only those that were registered as rentals would have an ownership residency proof requirement. You will have to prove you are the owner and the primary, or that's your primary residence to get the building permit. But once you've gotten that building permit, if you don't register as a rental, I was not assuming there was some other check by the city on residency.
Okay, and just to clarify, if the state decides that we are overreaching with this particular requirement for renters, is it likely that the requirement for ownership of the primary property could go away in the future, that we would not be able to enforce that?
I mean, it's always possible. At this point, the city attorney's office has said that we're consistent with state law, but we all know how state law works in regards to rental occupancy. So yeah, it could change.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Can you talk about the 25% piece of, so 900 is the max, but 25% of the property being what can be used for?
So the 25% is for the rear yard, and it includes calculation of all accessory structures that would be in the rear yard. So in this particular graphic, the 25% equals the garage, that's a one-car garage, and the accessory dwelling unit. If there was a shed, it would be over the 25%. If this was a two-car garage, there would not be room for the accessory dwelling unit to be detached from the garage. So obviously, properties with constrained rear yards are more impacted by this because they may already have a lot of stuff in their rear yard and they may be at their 25%. If that's the case, they either need to remove some stuff, or if they're able to go vertical over the garage, if they have a two-story house, that might be another solution. Otherwise, they probably won't be able to do it.
Anything else?
That the 3-foot setback at the back. I think I also heard though that actually, from a practical standpoint, by the time you add your roof and pitch and all of that, you would be more than 3 feet from that line.
What the practical consideration is firewalls. If you want to avoid doing a firewall, it needs to be 5 feet from the property line. But the 3 feet is what's in the code now for accessory structures. So that's why we said 3 feet. You could do 3 feet, but you're going to be paying more money because you're going to be required to do a firewall.
Firewall. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And to be clear, the 3 foot allows, that's to the edge of the eave or to the wall. Nothing can be closer than 3 feet. So you can't be at 3 and then have an eave extend over any further.
Okay.
So there's.
And that's also for a 1-story structure, not 2-story.
Okay.
It's different requirement for 2-story.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
I commend you for the work on the public outreach.
Mhm.
I wish we could have had this kind of information on the residential property maintenance code that we did. This is very helpful. I have 2 questions. Do you have a sense, either one of you, are there such things as best practices by our peer communities? This is sort of new for us, and it'd be helpful to know if other communities have, is there sort of a standard practice for ADUs in Iowa? I remember if we talked about that when we first visited about this.
We did a little bit. Eloise brought us a lot of examples before we stared of other communities.
Oh, yeah, like Cedar Rapids.
A lot of different.
That's right.
So I think Des Moines and Iowa City are really the 2 that in Iowa might allow it. Is that true, Eloise?
Well, actually, West Des Moines allows it, but also surprisingly, Indianola allows ADUs. I don't know the details of their rules because, of course, everybody's rules are somewhat unique to their community. But the place that was most interesting in the research was Bloomington, Indiana, which, of course, is in Iowa. But being a college town, about 5 or 7 years ago, they first implemented accessory dwelling units, and they had a very restrictive process where they required special use permit. And it really made it so there were very few that got built. So then after 5 or 6 years, they reevaluated their guidelines and requirements and made it easier. So they're really interested in supporting accessory dwelling units. So it's kind of fun to follow them to see what they're doing because they have learned a lot through their process already.
Right. And then I watched most of the planning and zoning meeting, and you did a really good job, by the way.
Thank you.
But could you summarize for us the dialogue that P&Z had with respect to parking requirements? And this is an interesting area for me because parking is going to vary as an issue across the community. And so some areas, parking is really a minimum today. And other parts of the community, it's not such a high priority. And could you just give us a little flavor of how P&Z worked through that issue?
Well, at the P&Z meeting, there was another item on the agenda that dealt with parking. And it was talking about parking for affordable housing. So I think that may have had some influence over the discussion on ADUs. But I'm trying to remember the details of
Yeah,
our.
I don't have my notes with me. I think they went through the exercise of discussing what does it mean. It does mean that some properties might not be able to do this if they can't squeeze in that second parking space, and they're trying to weigh the balance of if some people can't take advantage of it, is that okay? Because that's just the standard that we're going to have for that parking. And then the questions kind of evolved into, well, and you've had some of these written comments too, like, well, what if I don't need a car because it's my mother-in-law unit? Well, somebody might not be your mother-in-law in the future, so that's why the car is required. So it's a universal standard. It's not based on an occupant. It's based on that it could be used by someone that needs a vehicle or wants a vehicle. So they kind of walked through different options with that. They made no recommendations. They were just looking at it as a preliminary review in terms of what's going to come back to them. But they did talk quite a bit about the different options related to parking.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions?
I don't know if you're prepared to also say a little bit about how this might impact affordable housing stock in the city? Like, are there particular neighborhoods that then, with the additional unit, might end up making a property more expensive for in the future when it's sold?
So certainly if you have an addition on your house or more structures on your house, your property and the value of your property is increased.
Right.
So, but the part of this, of the ADU idea is to have more affordable rentals available for people. And right now, if you want a 1-bedroom apartment, it's going to be in a multi-housing building, and it's not going to be the same as having your own space that's detached from others. So we don't have anything like this today, and it can provide for more affordable housing based on the size of the unit, and of course, it's going to be based too on the market and what people want to charge. But some of the people that said they were really interested in accessory dwelling units did talk about affordable housing and that being a primary reason for their support of it. So it's going to be, my personal feeling is that for people to first invest in an accessory dwelling unit, most of those people are probably going to do it for family members. because it's more affordable to house an aging parent that way than paying years and years of assisted care or nursing care. Eventually, time will move on and that unit might become available for rental. And then it might, I just see it as a transition thing, as is the case with families. As people age and things change within the family as to how it might be utilized. ADUs have a lot of flexibility that way. The main thing is they are terribly expensive to build on the front end because it's a single unit that you're adding utilities to. And so you don't have the benefit of volume discount or anything like that. Some communities have had people come in and offer to design and build ADUs for people, and they'll put forth some designs and it'll be a business that's created. But, there is an expense.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? So as a follow-up to your question, or about a business building them, could someone bring in a pre-manufactured ADU and drop it on a slab on grade?
Right now, they could do that based on the code as is proposed. It would need to be on a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
It would need to be hooked into utilities. They would not be able to do that in Old Town because there would still be design guidelines that would prohibit that.
The other question is that
The
I understand that
historic
go
district,
ahead.
right? You're
Yes.
saying in the historic district that probably won't
I'm
work,
sorry.
but the broader single family conservation overlay could be done.
So the 3-foot setback, I understand that you're trying to make it so that someone can remodel a garage for sake of discussion or turn it into ADU as a possibility. Is there any value of looking at an ADU that's going to be occupied, that's a new construction, to match the existing side yard setback of an existing building, just from a standpoint of, aesthetics and also from a standpoint of respecting the adjacent property owners, property? Is there any benefit to that from a design standpoint in your professional opinion?
Well, for a one-story ADU, the side yard setback for a one-story house is 6 feet. So we're saying if you're avoiding having to build a firewall, you're at 5 feet. So I'm not sure that 1 foot makes a huge difference.
I think for a one story, I'm not sure there's a significant value to saying we're going to line up the side yards. This will be biased on everybody, how they want to use their space. I think the one benefit of the 3 foot is it lets you maximize your rear yard space to be contained and be usable as much as possible versus having setbacks, bringing buildings into it and kind of interrupting it. There's always going to be a balance then of what's the compatibility of the sides. The 2 story is probably the one that's a little more questionable. We do require that get moved in on the side, but not the rear. I think the pressure will be on the rear property line on all of these because that's the most relief that's granted to you over the side.
All right, we'll open up public comment. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this particular topic tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public input. And
Mayor, I have one more question.
Yep.
That I'd like to just get clarity on.
please go ahead.
Anita asked about whether ADUs were going to increase property values. And I was wondering about the 900 square foot limit. Is it possible that in lowering the amount of square footage that we allow to, say, 650 or 700 square feet, that we would be minimizing the increase in property value and also keeping the ADU in approximately the same size as a typical 1-bedroom apartment in Ames?
think they're two different things. I don't know that you can meaningfully say the value of the property would be different with 100 or 200 square feet less of habitable area. Yeah, it will be less, but does it change the affordability to a lower income household? I doubt it. But the other part of that was, is it a better size comparison to think of it as limiting it down to fit what is typically a 1-bedroom apartment? I think that's up for you guys to decide. It also addresses the setback issue. If it's a little bit smaller unit, maybe it fits better with those reduced setbacks. It is a 1-bedroom standard right now. So a 1-bedroom, 900 square foot building is a lot. I think the one trade-off on that comment would be, how does it work if it's a 2-story unit over a garage? If you go to 700 on a 2-story, that's going to be really tough on someone that has a 2-car garage, because that 2-car garage is going to be 400 already, probably, give or take. It leaves you 300-ish, maybe 350 on the second floor. Again, doable, but smaller. So maybe it's looked at differently if you reduce the total on how a 2-car garage would work. But that would be, I mean, we can make that work however you guys want to do that.
So your point being that in this example here, if that garage is worth as 200 square feet, the actual ADU would be limited to 700 square feet in size.
Nope, only if it's attached to the garage. Each accessory building can be up to 900 square
Okay,
feet.
thank you.
Oh.
Thanks for
It's
clarification.
if you build over the garage that the garage is counted against your 900.
Because it's part of a,
It's part
inter-
of the building.
Got it. Thank you for
Yep.
clarification. All right. Is there a motion to give some direction to staff? There's 4 options listed in the staff report. Entertain a motion.
I would like to move option 1.
And would you just clarify what that is?
Sure, to direct staff to proceed with preparing a draft ordinance for public hearings related to text amendments to Chapter 31, Historic Preservation, Chapter 29, Zoning Ordinance, to adopt ADU standards consistent with draft regulations, and to exempt ADUs from OSFC. Chapter 13 Rental Code would be updated as well.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved to seconded. Any
So-
closing discussion?
So question, so there's still a lot of details to be worked out on this. And I'm gonna come back to the parking because I think that's a big issue for us to yet think through. When would we work through those issues?
I guess I would prefer now. I don't think we're intending to come back with options. I think if we go forward with what's here, we have enough to write an actual ordinance. And then you would have precise language, how it's going to be written, how it's going to be applied. It would go to P&Z for a recommendation and come back to you for final approval. At that time, you can edit that ordinance, but I was not intending to bring any issues back to you between now and then, unless it's something we have not thought about. I think we've thought about it all.
And
Otherwise, you would have to give me direction to come back.
And with parking, to Tim's question, that currently in your draft says that they would need a spot.
Need a spot.
So I think given that, it would, if we proceeded, right, then we could see if we get a lot of feedback about that being very onerous, right? And then we could, then in a year's time, we could think about changing it if we get a lot of that feedback over time.
All right. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried.
Just to give people that are watching think they're going to submit building permits next week, it's still going to be quite a while. Like I said, there's a lot of code to adjust. We hope to be to P&Z before the end of the year. I don't know if we'll make it back to you before the end of the year. If we do, it'll be at the end of December in all likelihood. So there's quite a bit to work with the city attorney's office on getting this drafted.
All right. Thank you. Move on to item number 28, duplexes public outreach summary.
Yeah, I'll address this one. So in this case, for the duplex outreach, it was quite a bit different in the sense that the ADUs were potentially on every single family property in the city. So it was a much bigger potential impact or issue for a lot of people across the community. As drafted, the duplexes can only be built if they're new construction, meaning a vacant lot or you've demolished an existing house to create a vacant lot so you can build a duplex. So there's a lot less of those in the city. There's very few vacant lots in the city. So our efforts were really, again, not trying to gauge if people are interested in building one or not, because it wasn't really an easy option for somebody. So it was really more of an open comment on what you thought of the compatibility standards overall. And that's probably the key part about all of this. Staff is supporting the duplex option fundamentally because of the design guidelines that are going along with this. The intent here with Ames Plan 2040 is infill that it's compatible, not driving density, but driving infill that's compatible. So with that, we've given you those comments. Again, I think it depends on how you look at this. Duplexes are a different type of structure, different kind of layout on property. We think we can address it pretty well with the guidelines that are in there. So we're recommending to move forward with that allowance in general for duplexes with those design guidelines. You do have some feedback about how they work. I think, again, the garage is the defining element of these structures, and exactly what you have as a garage allowance will ultimately dictate how these structures are built. As proposed, we have a 50% limit on the facade size for a garage, which is really trying to guide you towards a 1 or 2 car garage facing the street, or if you're going to have more garage, to put it to the side or to the rear. A corner lot would be able to do that differently and kind of have 2 garages, 1 on each frontage, and make that work as 2 driveways. But on a regular interior lot, we're kind of trying to minimize that look, because most houses are not 4-car garages aren't even allowed for single family homes. So that's how we're addressing that. The one issue that we need direction on is the near campus neighborhoods. The reference is to 2018 in the rental code about trying to control unintended conversions or increases in occupancy in the near campus neighborhoods. And it controls occupancy based on bedroom counts from 2018. And what that was trying to do is to not take a smaller house, tack on multiple bedrooms because we changed parking requirements and just said we're only going to require 2 spaces regardless of the occupant number. We didn't want to encourage adding 2 more bedrooms, converting porches, things like that were detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. So we defined your bedroom occupancy off of 2018. We did not deal with new structures. So it was unclear what we would do if someone demolished a house at near campus and replaced it with a duplex. So that is what we need direction on tonight. I did send you an email earlier this afternoon to give you a little bit of the sense of the magnitude there. Most residential properties in the city are over the minimum lot size threshold to have a duplex. That's not surprising. Most people own more than 7,000 square feet if they have a single family home. We did say about 83% of the properties that are a single family zoned property are over 7,000. So you can see the vast majority would be eligible for a duplex in this. We did also throw out a different threshold of 10,000 square feet just to give you a different sense of, well, what if it was a different minimum lot size? And that dropped it significantly. I think it was just below 50%. And we gave you a map for that. Another option, which I think is a viable option here, is to just not allow duplexes in the near campus neighborhood. I think it depends on what we're trying to do with the near campus bedroom limitation. Are we trying to control the look of structures? If that's the case, the duplex guidelines can do that. If you're really trying to control rental concentration issues or conversion of affordable housing into investor properties, I think the only effective way to do that would be not to allow duplexes there. We can walk the middle line and just say your bedroom count from 2018 is your number for a duplex. So if you had a 4-bedroom house and you want to convert it into 2 2-bedroom duplexes, we can do that. I think it's tough to administer over time. I think there's pressure on those units being used differently than what we all say the rules allow. But I think that's what we need to know tonight. Are we trying to address the aesthetics, which the draft rules do? Are you trying to manage rental concentration and conversion of properties? That does not do this. Or is there a middle ground that you think is a compromise position there? So that's our summary of the input and our issues for tonight.
Thank you. Gloria, go ahead. You ask some questions.
So it's a comment and a question. First of all, I do not support prohibiting duplexes in the near campus neighborhoods, but I do think that the 7,000 square foot lot limit is too low. And so bumping that lot size up to 10,000 square feet makes sense to me, in that it would still allow us to have some duplexes. I'm wondering, Kelly, if I'm right in the assumption that many of those 10,000 square foot plus lots are the more expensive houses that are less likely to be sold and then demolished to create duplexes. It seems to me that the smaller houses, the starter housing stock is more threatened than maybe those larger established homes.
I didn't dig into that any further than just to analyze the lot mixture in these areas. I would say that's a good premise, but I can't back that up for you right now that that's true, but it would seem to make sense. And I'm going to pull up the map that you have so everybody knows what we're talking about here.
I think it generally holds true for the housing stock that I'm familiar with in the near campus neighborhoods, but I haven't looked at all the addresses on the map. It's just my own impression that many of those larger lots also have larger, older homes that are higher priced and therefore less likely to be seen as opportunities for demolition.
Yeah, again, I would agree that's probably true. I just don't know to what degree.
Any other questions, Gloria?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, open up public comment. Does anyone want to address council on this topic tonight? Justin?
Evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. Appreciate staff working on this. It'll be nice to be able to build duplexes again in town. You all received my letter earlier on. I think one of the components, and I'm not sure if it's changed since an earlier presentation, but in my opinion, we need to allow 2-car garages per each side. These would be built as rentals, or somebody owns and occupies one side and rents the other one. But given our current rental market and the demands, I think we need to at least have that 2-car garage option on each side. Otherwise, you're going to force more parking in the street and they're going to be harder to rent. So happy to answer any questions anybody might have. Thank you.
Why do you believe you need to have 2-car garages besides the fact of just having stacked cars in a driveway, Justin?
Yeah, just off of the responses we've gotten from different rental surveys, in my opinion, if you're going to go into a duplex rather than apartment, you're likely having a family or multiple roommates. And so you're going to want that space. You know, I think even across the street from me, a father and his daughter bought the home across the street. They've got a 1-car garage. They can't fit a car in there. And so now where we used to have no cars on our street, now we have 4 cars every single day. And so I think having that option of being able to get cars into garages, cars onto driveways, keeps them off the street, or at least allows that opportunity. Because as soon as the girls have their boyfriends over, then we go from 4 cars to 6 to 8 cars, and it's not that big of a street. So I think at least allowing that option to get some parking on the property would really be beneficial.
And I appreciate personally your sending an example, picture.
Yeah.
You said it's an 89-foot wide lot, and I think one of the questions I think that council is struggling with is, if you have a 60-foot wide lot, how are you going to get that to look not like it's just a 4-car garage with 2 entry doors on it, in an area from a standpoint of how that might affect the aesthetics of an overall neighborhood. Maybe you could just comment on that since you have experience doing this.
Yep. And so that's actually the smallest size. Well, no, take that back. We did that exact same townhome. We split that off and did it as a standalone single-family home in Sunset Ridge. And then we've done it as a 2-unit building that you saw in the image. We've done it as a 3-unit building up in Gilbert. We've done it as a 4-unit building over in Nevada. But we knew that we had, 36 and a half feet for the width of the building plus the setbacks on top of that. So we've just adjusted those lot sizes based on that. I think that there's lots of options to maneuver, some of those spaces around. And I like staff's comment about, if you've got a corner lot, then you could load a garage off each side, but without, in my mind, a lot of these infills are going to be one-offs where you're going to have to change the design and change, the overall appearance for each specific infill lot. As Kelly and Eloise indicated, there's not a lot of lots out there, but you're going to have to make accommodations for each situation as it comes about.
So are the ones that you built, are they on new lots, or are they actually infill an existing?
Those are on new lots. The ones that we did in Nevada were on an existing lot.
And just out of curiosity, because again, affordable, you know this more than anyone else does. You're in the business, but affordable housing stock is of great concern to council in terms of attracting workforce and entry level. Help assuage concerns that we don't start having a run on people trying to buy up houses that are maybe starter houses, clear cutting those and starting to put up duplexes.
Yeah. So right now, if your lot cost on a unit like this is $60,000, you're probably looking at $320,000 per side. And at that point in time, the market right now is renting these in between $2,000 and $2,200, $2,300 a month. So
you're saying
that's just off of the cost of construction.
If you had a house that was 100,000 or more, that's going to start really sullying the.
You're not going to be able to make a cash flow unless you put a tremendous amount of money down.
That was a number I think I was looking for, was just to kind of help understand what that threshold might be, because I don't think there's very many $60,000 houses in Ames, last I checked. But
No.
Thank you for your expertise and for participating. Any questions? That normally we don't do that, but because you have the expertise and get some market snapshot, it'd be helpful. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, we'll close public input.
If I can address that just really quickly, it's indirectly that you can't have that particular structure the way this is written. The design guideline has the 50% rule, so that probably doesn't quite meet 50%, but that's probably something that could be accomplished by many people if they had to live with the 50% rule. It's actually our driveway standard. We don't allow more than one driveway cut per property unless you have over 150 feet. So that's where the corner lot lets you do it, because you're probably going to have over 150 feet. So if we were to go this path, we would have to alter the driveway standard in relation to duplexes to do that. And as Justin said, there's a different version of this same thing where you do single family attached and you have a property line that's going between the units. Well, then you would have 2 lots and you could have 2 driveways. So it's that driveway standard that is really controlling here a little bit more than the design requirements. And I think like you pointed out, Mayor, an 89-foot lot's pretty uncommon in an infill situation versus a new construction situation. So there's, I guess it kind of depends on how you want to look at that, if this is something that we should accommodate or not.
And thank you for that, Mayor. So are we contemplating all these being on single lots? Could you build something and then create like what do they call the houses down in Southdale, the patio homes where you have a shared driveway, but those are separate lots.
So there's so by definition, a duplex is 2 units on 1 lot. So there would only be 1 owner of that property. What you're describing would be a version of what we call single family attached. So some zones allow it already. RL zoning does not allow single family attached. It's only the FSRL districts, the newer districts, where you could split that with a lot line and do that. It's the older ones that you can't. Now, You do have a referral to staff to come back with a definition of another building type called a townhome. And it could be the answer to your question, that this product might be able to meet a townhome definition, but it would still have to have the lot line splitting the units instead of being 2 units on one lot.
So why should we care about whether this is one lot or two?
I think
Or if we're
I-
interested in increasing density, it doesn't really matter, does it? I mean,
I think it comes down to the perception that a duplex is rarely has either unit owner occupied. It can, but if you make it 2 individual units that are saleable, there's always the more potential for someone to possibly be an owner occupied unit. So I think it comes down to that balance or that interest in promoting owner occupied housing versus more likely investor owned rental housing. At the end of the day, it's still 2 units. The density calc is the same. It's that possible ownership difference, possible, not guaranteed.
so, and again, why would we as a council care who owns it?
Many communities care about their owner occupied percentages. We have a goal in Ames Plan 2040 to increase our number of owner occupied housing in the city in relation to rental. So we're not saying no to rental, but we're saying we have a goal of increasing our total number of owner occupied homes in the city to try and balance out that mix of rental versus ownership.
So that's an incentive then to have the duplex rather than the side by side on the attached single family on 2 lots.
Other way around. The 2 lots is, again, I can't guarantee their owner, but the 2 lots is more likely to yield an owner occupied unit than a duplex.
Okay.
I think that bears out from rental history, because if we go through the rental records of the 1,000 duplexes in the city, if the owner lives in one, you don't register that unit, you only register the rental one. And there's not very many that have an owner occupied unit, and then the other one is rented. They're almost all both rented.
Okay.
You know, I'm sure you're tracking this or aware of it, but it's amazing as I read through newspaper articles and journals. There's a shift going on in the country, and that is there's more and more single family homes being built by investors, and they're renting them. People are not buying them. Partly, I think it's a cost driven situation. And so I know that back in 2018, we were wrestling with a number of rental units because it was really focused on how it's going to affect, the near campus neighborhoods. This is not for tonight to discuss. I'm just mentioning it from the standpoint that maybe we have to have a paradigm shift in terms of saying maybe there's going to be more need for single family or townhomes, but that they're built by investors, but rented by families or young professionals, whatever. And it's a whole different conversation. And now maybe Kelly, I'm sure you're following that really, but there's entire tracts of homes today. They're being built and they're all rented. No one's buying any of them. It's just an investor. So it's an untraditional the American dream of owning a home is potentially changing, and probably it's cost and probably it's a matter of people don't want to be saddled with owning a home and having to deal with the maintenance and stuff too. So I know it's just when you asked that, Tim, and then Kelly's response, awesome. Oh, something. Anyway, that's all. So that's all. All right. Is there what direction do we want to give staff tonight? There's several options that are included in the staff report on this item.
Kelly, do you have a recommendation for council on this?
On the near campus neighborhood, I think I just need to understand the intent of the bedroom restriction. Like I said, I think we can, if we want to apply it, that you don't get any more if you build a duplex. That's one way to deal with it. The other way is just to not allow them at all if you're concerned about the total number of concentration of rental properties and that changeover of smaller houses into duplexes.
Well, Kelly, isn't it also true that we have the option to say lots over 10,000 square feet, and that also would limit the number of smaller homes that might be endangered by the ordinance?
Yes, you could change the minimum lot size standard, which would reduce the number of lots in the city that might potentially have one. And if you think through, I mentioned that in the email, if you truly actually built a duplex in every 7,000 square foot lot that exists, we would exceed our density calculations. That's not the math that fits the density of a low density neighborhood. It's to have some duplexes, not all duplexes. Different zones could have that higher density, but the low density ones are not meant for that. So a 10,000 square foot number fits that model a little bit better versus the 7. The 7's just been on the books for so long. We don't allow them now, but that was the old standard. That's where it came from. So 10,000 could be a reasonable number too.
Mayor, would you entertain a motion to adjust the lot size limitation to 10,000 feet?
Open to any motion you wish to make.
I would move that we change the lot size minimum to 10,000 square feet.
Is there a second?
Can I ask a quick question? Was
That's
that for
it.
near?
Let's do a second first.
Okay.
Is there a second? Go ahead.
Was that for near campus only or citywide?
I would say citywide, but I don't know what the difference is. It seems to me most of the smaller lots are in our near campus neighborhoods.
Citywide.
Again, we didn't audit the whole city to tell you what that would mean. I know there are some vacant lots in the city. For example, we're the proud owner of one on North Grand that's 8,500 square feet, where we took down a dangerous building. It used to be multiple units. So it's, again, that's on it's on Grand, and whether that's a duplex property in the future or not, that kind of hinges on that question of the 10,000 square feet or not. Now, we've already demolished it. We didn't do this we're removing a dangerous building. We weren't doing this to try to create an investment opportunity. So we're maybe a different customer here. So that's kind of the play there, Gloria, in relation to some of these housing issues is why are you demolishing the structure? But I can't judge the motive of a demolition permit.
Well, my main concern is the near campus neighborhoods, so I would amend my motion to make the 10,000 square feet applicable in near campus neighborhoods if my seconder approved of that.
Anita, are you agreeable to that?
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Everyone understand the motion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried.
So I'm just going to tease that out. So the new standard would be the 10,000, but from a rental code perspective, it will be considered 2 new units eligible for whatever bedroom counts are in those units, right? So that's ultimately what we're saying is that it's a new
Define
structure.
in those units. What do you mean by those?
They won't be restricted by the 2018 bedroom count. Because that's ultimately what I'm trying to answer is if I build a new structure, what's the bedroom count going to be? I'm taking this to be that if I build on a 10,000 square foot lot, it's a new structure. I'm not bound by the 2018 bedroom count limit on that duplex.
Is there any limits at all?
No.
You have big duplex.
You can build 2 5-bedroom units and have 10 bedrooms legitimately and rent to 5 adults in each unit. That's where I'm concerned on the investor side of things with the duplexes. You don't see that. What Mr. Dodge was showing us, that's not what are regularly built. You do not regularly build a 5-bedroom duplex. That is not normal. That's a lot of money for to try to rent that out. But when you're renting to students a quarter or half a mile from campus, it's a different equation.
So what were the 2018 standards again?
You are limited to the number of bedrooms on record with the city that existed in the principal dwelling in
that won't help us.
2018.
Okay.
Everywhere or just in new campus? Just in the near.
Just the near campus. So that's that map, those highlighted 7 neighborhoods maybe are ultimately what that is.
Which would then allow other areas of town, you could build larger duplexes then.
Yeah, you just don't see that anywhere else. You just don't normally see anybody build a 5.
No, but and the point is that I think that for those that were on council in 2018, 19, we went through an awful lot of public input, and there's an awful lot of concern about the amount of bedrooms in a near, especially in South Campus, and somewhere in CCOAMS and also in Oak to Riverside.
Yeah.
So I think that would be something that should be given consideration in this motion to make sure that there's not like all of a sudden, not that that is going to happen, but just to kind of assuage and respect the feedback you got 5 years
And
ago.
again, we're going to draft an ordinance. There will be more feedback when the real standards are out there. So it's not like tonight we're making a final decision. We're going to get feedback on whatever standard comes out of this.
Given the, I'm going to make an exception to my policy. Justin, you want to make one more comment? I think it's important. You don't want to have staff go down a path developing ordinances and public input. If there's, what would you like to share real quickly?
And I don't think you closed public input yet.
Oh yeah, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably just didn't say it loud enough.
So the last 4 or 5 years, I've done a rental survey of the different property management companies. And I always ask for comments as far as what they're seeing in the marketplace. And the last 4 years or so, it's been around campus that as soon as you get to the higher bedroom counts, the 3s, 4s, and 5s are the hardest to rent. It's the 1s and the 2-bedroom units that are going the quickest. And so as you're looking at, and the concern of, somebody building a 5-unit side or a 4-unit side, from an investor's standpoint, they probably wouldn't want to build that many because right now they're having to actually discount some of those units. Say they're renting a 5-unit apartment build or 5-unit apartment to 3 people and then discounting the rent down to the 3 people.
Mhm.
So just, like I said, food for thought
Thank
as
you.
you're looking.
Appreciate that. Okay. All right. So there's been no motion made, but Kelly posed the question: is there any kind of a interest in limiting or not sunsetting, grandfathering in the amount of bedrooms based on a current 2018 count, or allow the market to decide? That's the question, right?
Yeah, not to grandfather, whether they're limited by that standard or as a new structure, does it get to have a new bedroom?
Right. Yeah. So in other words, does the current limitation hold like, as a
Right.
grandfather? So to
Yep,
speak?
that's the main question.
Or like, can they go ahead and go up in light of what Justin shared? Which is no guarantee, but that's what they're seeing in the market.
Are we able to set the maximum number of bedrooms and not have that challenged at the state level? For example, if we said that no duplex in a near campus neighborhood may have more than 3 bedrooms per unit, is that the kind of thing that could be challenged?
I'm concerned it's legal now through a couple of different lenses of that. And yes, it could be challenged in the future about controlling how rental housing is managed compared to for sale or owner occupied home. I'm a little nervous about that. Maybe we can get there, but they seem to be focused on having objective standards in terms of parking spaces, max coverage, things like that. I believe Iowa City has some equation about bedroom count in their ordinances. I'd have to look into it, Gloria. I'm not 100% confident that we can or can't do it that way.
Robin, did you have a question or comment? Okay.
No.
All right. So staff is looking for feedback on what to do with in the near campus neighborhood bedroom count. What direction you want to offer?
I would go ahead and move that in the near campus neighborhood, we limit the bedroom count to the 2018 number.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I think Kelly's concerns seem reasonable and that this would be a good step to take. And I get your point, Gloria, about what if the state says we can't? But we won't know until we go down that road anyway. So
This would seem to be the most consistent, though, in terms of what you currently have,
mm-hmm.
and you're not making new policy, so to speak.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Well, I think it's also the case that the larger homes that may be 5 bedrooms or more are also more likely to be on those 10,000 square foot lots. So I think that it's a consistent policy and it probably would apply in some of those instances where people might want to demolish an older structure.
And I think that time will tell as you go through it and start opening it up. Maybe someone comes back and asks for consideration of a change if necessary. All right, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carried. And then there's several options offered by staff in the report relative to how to proceed. Is there any motion on those? Option 1, direct staff to proceed with public hearings for a zoning text amendment for proposed duplex regulations based on current draft. Or then number 2 is, I would say, there'd be some amendments. Actually, option 2 is not true because it prohibits in near campus neighborhood.
I'll move option 1.
Is there a second?
Second.
And that would be as with the direction that was given to staff tonight, because the current,
Correct.
Okay.
Would be to proceed with the draft regulations with the addition of the 10,000 square feet in your campus and the clarity in the rental code that your bedroom count is based on your 2018 count before you built the duplex.
in the near campus.
In
neighborhood.
near campus, yeah. That only applies in near campus.
Yep. Okay. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Anything else you need on this one, Adam? Are you good on
Nope,
this?
I think we're good. They've been a companion item till now. We might diverge. This one might be easier to deal with. ADUs might be easier to deal with, but they might come back to you separately if that's all right, as we get them done.
All right, move on. Item 29, staff report, paving exceptions, Pullman Street and Carnegie Avenue.
Yeah, tonight you referred this request to us. It's a unique issue related to our missing infrastructure improvement requirements. From time to time, this has come up in various ways across the community. This is an ordinance we adopted, I think, in 2015 to try to fill gaps for sidewalks, street improvements, extensions of utilities that were happening when development was happening on existing lots that had not triggered subdivision. So prior to this ordinance, if you didn't trigger a subdivision, we had no requirements to make you make improvements we would expect of everybody else. So this ordinance has been pretty valuable to us to close some gaps, like at the corner of Southeast 5th and Duff. That used to be a lot that did not have any of the things that you see today. When they built those new buildings there, that caused those sidewalk improvements and other things to happen in those areas. So it's an example of an important tool that we have. Now, the case tonight is a little bit different. You have 2 gravel streets that are referenced here, Carnegie and Pullman. It's a very old industrial part of town. In this particular case, there is water that runs through these streets. There's a looped water main there, but there is no sanitary sewer and the road is gravel. The owner of the property was looking at adding a small building to the site. It triggered these improvement requirements, and that was not feasible to them. So that's the genesis of the letter. The options that we put forward are, you could look at this 2 different ways. One would be, in this case, there's not a lot of development potential here. There isn't maybe a way to financially do much of the improvements here. So you could look at a scenario under option 1 where a waiver could be granted by the Public Works Director. So if there's a scenario based on the proposed use, the improvements that are required kind of outweigh the magnitude of the project, that the Public Works Director could waive that expectation. So there's a little bit of a case-by-case analysis there at the discretion of the Public Works Director. Option 2 is a little bit just uniformly say, we're going to remove gravel roads from the street improvement requirements, specifically Carnegie and Pullman. So then there's no discretion exercised by staff. It's just excluded from the improvement requirements. There's not a lot of gravel streets in the city. In the industrial area, you have Pullman, you have Carnegie, you have Friel. Now, Friel's not on this list because Friel's a little different order of magnitude for length of street and the amount of property that's on it. We did not throw that in here at this point. I think that would take its own evaluation to see how Friel works versus these 2 streets.
What about the street that Bergeson just asked us about?
So that's a little bit different because those are single family residential properties. They are not subject to this ordinance.
I see. Thank you.
So single family and 2 family homes are not subject to this. It has to be a multifamily property or commercial or industrial.
Eloise, could you put the the map. If you could scroll down a little bit further just to help people who may not, these are streets that many people may not be familiar
Yeah.
with.
So Carnegie's the north-south street there on the left that intersects with
Why
Lincoln
don't
Way.
you give them some context where this is at?
Yep. So this is out east off of Lincoln Way. So you don't get to see the label, but Lincoln Way is right at the bottom of that picture. Carnegie's the intersection there that takes you into this industrial area. That's an unimproved public street. And then you get all the way near the railroad tracks where you see Pullman. And then there's that block of Pullman that is unimproved. The eastern segment does have concrete paving out in that area. So the request is to look at Carnegie and Pullman. You could do just Pullman. But those are the two streets that came up in relation to this area. We did throw in that in 2015, we put some other thresholds in there that if we're going to open this ordinance up, we should probably update the improvement threshold of when you trigger these improvements. The standard was $100,000 in 2015. Obviously, construction costs are quite a bit different. It's 8 years later, so that number should probably be increased as well to reflect more consistent cost of work to match what was expected in 2015. So the Schaefer request is about street improvements. We would address some other issues that are kind of outstanding at the same time.
Questions?
And ultimately tonight, I think if you pick option 1 or 2, you really need to say that's how it gets slotted into the work plan review that is upcoming. I gave you a non-agenda memo on Friday just to give you a sense of what's all in the work plan and what's not in the work plan. So these one-offs, they keep coming to you. At some point, we need to evaluate them all together. Otherwise, we just keep dealing with the one-offs, and that might be valuable. But you have to really look at this probably with some other things in 2 weeks. But tonight would be helpful to understand the magnitude of the request, if it should be put on that list or not.
All right. Open up public comment. Does anyone wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Any closing questions for staff? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion on one of the options.
Could you help us just, I apologize, maybe this is obvious, but as we think about cost benefit analysis of what we're doing, we've made some great progress in terms of requiring gaps in the infrastructure to be closed. But in situations like this, it's hard to see the public good in requiring a lot here. And could you help us just maybe give us some general handles that as council we can think from a policy perspective?
Yeah, I don't disagree. Pullman was not the intent of the ordinance. You have such small lots here. It's really hard to understand how a private investment on these smaller properties can really handle this full infrastructure. And importantly, they're not asking the city to do it either. The people on this street are satisfied with the level of service they have from the city.
Right.
And if you were to create the waiver process or the exclusion process, it doesn't change the life safety standards. They won't be able to get a building permit if there's not water supply for fire protection. If they need sewer service, it still has to happen. It's just not this proactive, you must put it in to ensure that all types of uses can happen here. So I think we're still safeguarded from health, safety, and general welfare there. Pullman is definitely not our target. Carnegie's a little different animal. If Carnegie was not city frontage for a large stretch of it, I would probably have a different answer. Like if you looked at that large area on the west side of Carnegie as development, we should have a different conversation because that's a big property that would have a significant impact versus the little properties on Pullman. That's why option 1's kind of the safer option in the sense that the public works director is still looking at this to look at scope. Option 2 is just writing it off as don't worry about it.
So which of these is responding best to Mr. Schaefer's request?
Either would resolve his concern. In conversations with Public Works, they're fine waiving the expectations for the Pullman site. So he can get there through either 1 or 2.
Can I make a motion?
Given the fact that there's been some conversation by council, And how can you push some of these decisions down to the staff level? So it's
Right.
not coming here. This would seem to be a perfect opportunity to consider doing that where
Right.
appropriate. And I'm sure that staff would come to council if they had some questions or concerns, right, Mr. Shanker?
Mr. Mayor.
I'd move option
First time I ever
one.
heard you say Mr. Mayor.
I'd move option one.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded to allow for limited development of existing properties with waiver of installation of any and all public improvements.
I move that we put that on the planning work plan.
For prioritization.
All right. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Gloria? Still there? Let the record show we had a 5-0 vote. Okay, move on to item number 30, presentation of a 2023 residential satisfaction survey. Thank you, Kelly. Results. Good evening, Susan.
Good evening. Okay, I'm here to present the results of the 2023 Resident Satisfaction Survey. This is the 41st annual survey. And just some backgrounds on this survey. This kicks off our budget process every year. It gives us some feedback on what residents are thinking about things like how money is spent, their level of satisfaction with certain things, and a lot of open-ended questions where they can just talk about their experience as Ames residents. We have done this survey for the last 20 years that I've been here with the Institute for Design Research and Outreach, or IDRO, from the College of Design. I want to thank Nora Lajahazen. She's been a wonderful asset to us over the last several years of doing this survey. She's been phenomenal. So just to refresh your memory, we send the survey to 1,350 utility bill customers. So they get an actual paper copy. I brought the copy of the survey before. It's 12 pages long. And we also email the survey to 1,000 ISU students. This year we had a good return rate. We had almost 600 return surveys. We had a dip last year where we only had about 400. So it was good to see that that number had bounced back up. There was an online option for non-students. So if you received the paper copy and you didn't want to fill it out, you could go online and enter a code and fill it out that way. And we had 56 people do it that way, which is another jump from last year. That more than doubled. And the survey was again offered in 5 languages. So if you received the copy of the survey in the mail and you wanted to go online and fill it out in a different language, you could do that. We did not have anybody take advantage of that this year. We did last year. Also, just to refresh your memory, this is a statistically significant survey, even though I hear people say every year they've never seen it and they don't get it. I tell them that, they have to be randomly selected. This survey comes with a confidence interval of 95% with a margin of error of plus or minus 4. That gives us the feeling that if the entire population of Ames received this survey, 95 out of 100 times, we know that the answers would be within plus or minus 4. So the timing of the survey, we distributed it in April to students and May through the mail. The changes this year, these were changes that you had said you had wanted to see differently in the survey this year. We added some questions on recycling, organized waste. We did a slight change in the wording to a DEI question. And then we added a couple of questions about SIRIDE. And I want to just set something straight right now. When doing the PowerPoint for this presentation last week, I realized that the SIRIDE answers were not in the survey. So I contacted Nora and she gave them to me over the weekend. So I do have a revised report. We will talk about the SIRIDE questions tonight, and then they'll be in a revised report. The reports are always placed on the city manager's page on the website. So along with the SIRAD questions that were missed, and then we are having a couple of issues with formatting the tables over the years and the back and forth between Nora's office and my office. Some of the tables have become disformatted or unformatted, and we need to fix those. So this gives us that opportunity to do that. So let's just kind of jump in. I'm going to go pretty high level and just pick some of the benchmarking questions that we usually talk about here. We talk about ongoing service priorities. And so we ask residents, should the city spend more, less, or the same on 10 priority areas? And you can see that the same is the value of number 2. So it's given a numerical value of 1, 2, or 3. And that middle column of should the city spend the same, in 10 out of 10 categories, that one comes up 61 to 86% of the time, or more than half of the respondents are saying the same. A couple of years ago, Nora added the 4th column about the averages. So that lets you know that if it's higher than a 2, then that's a little more to the more side. And if it's lower than a 2, then it's more to the less side. So the top 3 average ratings went to Ames Animal Shelter, where people were saying they would like to see more spending, human service funding, and SIRAD. And those have changed over the years. They do kind of vary. They go back and forth. And if you look over, I was just looking over the top, the last 5 years, you can see jumps, even substantial jumps. And then the next year that they go back to a different number. So it really isn't enough to say this one year you saw something that was significant, because you really have to look at them over time. And over time, we don't see like the same 3 always popping up like we do in other categories. And that's kind of what we just talked about. Then one of the big questions we ask every year is regarding property tax adjustments for the next year. And I don't think it should be much of a surprise, but keeping taxes at the same or no change, which is the red bar in the middle, consistent with about almost half of respondents saying no change. This year we had a little bit of an increase in they would be willing to pay more, 21%. The stay the same dropped that 1% to 48, and then decrease 30%. So almost a third of residents are saying decrease. But right again in the middle, stay the same. That's the one that the most people are suggesting. So now we'll talk a little bit about capital improvement priorities, asking if people thought they were somewhat or very unimportant, or somewhat or very important. So basically creating a 4-point scale to push people one way or the other. And again, if you look at the bottom, you'll see the 4-point scale. And so the average column on the far right lets you know that if they are 3 or higher, they're in the somewhat to very important. And if they're 2 or lower or under the 3, they're more unimportant. So in this category of the capital improvement priorities, we see the same 3 every year. Number 1 has always been reconstructing existing streets. And then the other 2 kind of switch back and forth. Traffic flow improvements and stormwater drainage improvements come in second and third pretty much every year. And that has been fairly consistent. And if you think about it, those are the things people use the most. Then we looked at basically departments or city services, and we asked residents to rank their satisfaction. And we removed the don't know, because people say, I don't have experience with this department. And so we take those out of the equation. And if you look at very to somewhat dissatisfied is on one column, and very to somewhat satisfied is on the other, you can see those numbers are pretty high. We rank in the 90s and above in 8 out of 10 of these categories. And the last 2, law enforcement and public nuisance, those are both enforcement services. And even they are in the 80s, 83 and 87%. So, and that has been, as you'll see, fairly consistent throughout the years. This is a 5-year look back at those same rankings. The last year is that kind of grayish color, and you can see that those levels have not changed significantly in the last 5 years. Okay, so here are the questions that we had to add back into the survey, and they were questions about fare free Cyride. So we asked residents, are you willing to increase your property taxes to make Cyride service fare free for all users? And you can see that 31% said yes and 68% said no. And of those who said yes, we asked them to provide an amount that they were willing to pay, and that information is in the report. And only half of them mentioned an amount they would pay, and it was such a small number of respondents that, and mostly in the lower, it was actually 200. The range was single digits up to $2,000, and they all sort of fell in between these different numbers. But again, it was a small list of people who said they were willing to pay, and they wanted to provide an amount. And then if you did offer fare-free Cyride, what were the expectations? And we had a list of expectations. And so people said, they responded to what their expectations were. And the first expectation would be expanded service to more parts of the community. And then 28% said they would not expect expanded service. So it was an interesting look at the question of fare-free Cyride. And like I said, I will get that in the survey, and we'll get that posted very quickly.
I have a question, Susan, on that. So it's a little tricky for someone to be asked what they want their property taxes. Most people are going to just say no, just out of hand. And so how much weight should we put on that? Iowa City just went fare free on at least part of their bus system. And so if we were to think through this, I don't want to overstate the significance of that result if people aren't given an amount in which their taxes would go up.
Yeah, they weren't given an amount. They were given an amount in the question that said the cost of providing fare-free Cyride could be $500,000 to $1.5 million. And so you'd have to know enough to do the math about what that might require everybody's property tax to go up. And I couldn't tell you. So, but I think it does give you just a sense of how people feel. So at first blush, are you willing to pay anything more to have this service? So I think that's what you need to take it as. It's a snapshot in time of somebody's reaction to paying additional for that service.
But we regularly give people a sense that for $100,000, this would be the increase. I mean, maybe that's a question to think about at some point. I'm just not going to wrap myself around that poll if I don't know that people have an understanding of the cost benefit for the community to ride fare free and how we would spread that pain out. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say on that.
And,
Yeah.
And a follow-up question is that question limited to just year-round residents who own property and pay property taxes, or does that include students?
It's
That includes
students.
students.
It's everybody.
So, and that's a good point.
So students
So,
could be saying
yeah.
no because they don't understand
you don't-
property taxes. And
yeah, so
what
their
they
rents
think
would
of
go
that.
up. Yeah.
But they may not make that connection. I mean, they may. I'm not saying they don't. But the point is that it just seems like that's an interesting.
Well, I think
And
it's a
Cyride
really good
is
point.
already fare free for students
Pardon me?
because of student fees. So maybe they said yes, maybe they said no. It's hard to tell.
Sadly, I mean, let's say, since everyone was answering the question, maybe someone said, boy, a student, I'd love to have more service to parts of the community. And it's really disconnected from the cost because they're already riding fare free. See what I'm saying? There's some pieces here that maybe aren't necessarily. I mean, it's a good question. It's just trying to tease it out.
Yeah.
Who's answering it? What are they trying to accomplish?
I think that's a challenge every time we come up with scenarios because we have to keep them pretty broad based. We've done this with the potential bond referendums. You have to make some guesses and you have to formulate a question in a way to kind of get a gut reaction. But if you wanted more detail about people's true thoughts, it might be one you would think about next February when I ask you again. Do you have some questions that you want in the survey?
It just seems that you could, though, ask that for this next question. Do you currently pay property taxes, or are you a homeowner? If no, skip to the next
Right.
question.
Right.
If yes, please answer the next question. And then you're going to try and tease that out, and you still get that information without like trying to have a complex we all probably fill out surveys where you just jump to the bottom for sometimes if you don't answer all the, if you don't need to answer all the questions.
Yeah, but see, even that type of phrasing could exclude a renter in the community that isn't a student, who maybe wants expanded service to their
Yeah.
part of the community.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Yeah. All right.
So one of the questions we asked was, are you interested in a system of garbage collection provided by one hauler? And we got interest, people who were interested, not interested, again, 31%, almost a third, and uncertain, about 29%. So there was a little bit more analysis to ask them if they were happy with their current provider. But in general, that was kind of the main gist of that line of questioning. And then we asked again about your preferences for sorting waste types from garbage. And I thought this one was kind of interesting because you did see quite a bit of a jump from 2022 to 2023 and what people were willing to do with separating out their garbage into categories. So I don't know if that's just an increase in awareness or a change of attitude. And again, it's just 1 year, so I would not make a lot of inferences from it, but something to watch. And then preferred method of disposing of these sorted items, sort of an interesting, it was kind of the same, but a little bit of a decrease in not interested. So it doesn't seem to follow the earlier graph, but we only have 2 years of data for this. So it would be something that if you wanted to continue following, we could talk about in February. This was the open-ended question that had been more focused with a DEI vocabulary, and we changed it to what can the city of Ames do to demonstrate its commitment to ensuring that all residents feel they belong, so more of a belonging question. And you can tell from some of the responses that people really looked at belonging as a really diverse population. They talked about services for people that need handicapped accessibility, financial status, elderly. So it just really was very broad-based responses. And there are many, many open-ended questions in the survey, and that's why it's over almost 150 pages. And I would really encourage you, of course, to go through and read those. It's, to me, it was really interesting because there's a fair amount of misinformation out there. And we talked about maybe what we could do with some of this response was answer some of those questions in some of our social media posts and respond to those. Because I'm assuming that one person writing it down represents more people that don't understand how something in the city works or don't understand a service that we don't provide or have questions. So of course, I know you all read the feedback, but it is interesting. Community engagement is another section that we have added. I thought this one also was interesting because now with 4 years of data, we see a jump in 2023 about people feeling connected, feeling knowledgeable about issues facing the community, feeling that issues facing the community are important, and that feeling that they are more engaged. And I just was pretty amazed at some of those jumps in people agreeing with those.
What happened in 2022? I mean, it was like a slump year.
It came off the pandemic. It was a weird year. We didn't get a lot of, we had a lower response rate.
Yeah.
And I thought this one also was interesting. The number of people who are self-reporting they're in excellent mental health, and the numbers of good and fair, poor and fair declining. So, I don't know what to make of that data, but I find it interesting that this, in general, survey seemed to be a little happier, a little more positive. And I know that because I have Steve's favorite slide, which shows the actual satisfaction levels that people gave us overall. And that's the big number is it's on a scale of poor, fair, good, and very good. And the number that Steve always likes to know is, how are our very goods? How did we do in the very best category? And this year, we had a 44% very good compared to last year, we had 37%. And of the goods, we had 54%. And that gave us a total of 98% in good or very good, which beats 97 last year. So overall, it was a very positive survey with really thoughtful comments. I always do the word cloud. What is the best thing about living in Ames? That's a really nice section to read if you want to get some nice feedback about what people like about Ames. They had a lot of things to say. And then there's just other comments when you ask about things that could be improved or things they want you to that they want the city to focus on. There was a lot of thoughtful comments and a lot of people who always surprised me by just saying thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to fill out this survey. And they seem really taking it very seriously and very pleased. So that's it in a nutshell. I certainly can try to answer any questions.
Yeah, I'd like to just take a really quick couple-minute break. We lost Gloria's audio, and your technician's going to come in and just double check on it. So let's just take a quick 2-3 minute break while he comes in and checks on it to make sure she can get back on. And then we'll reconvene no later than 8 o'clock. All right, we're back in session. And any questions for Susan on the survey? I did have one question on the property tax question. How is that framed? For example, people that say they want to have 30% 30% less taxes. Are they aware of what property taxes pay for in the community? And that if we reduce property taxes, what the impact might be on the services that they have?
So we rearranged where we put that question. So we used to put it right up front. Now we put it further into the survey. So you talk about basically program services, and then they ask about your payment of property tax. There's a little lead-in paragraph that says, this is what property taxes would be on a $100,000 home. This is your portion of city property tax. So the context is that the survey kind of takes you into it, and you have to think about programs, services, and then costs. So it doesn't specifically say, if you say, I would like my property tax decreased, does that mean you want less service? Or if you want them increased, does it mean you want more service? It just simply says, here's what a property tax bill would be on a $100,000 home, and what's your thought about that?
The reason I asked, this is the Iowa legislature's marching orders in their minds that when they go door knocking, people say they want their property taxes lowered. And my first question to them is, do you ask them what services they want to have reduced if they're going to reduce property taxes? And they say, well, no, they just want their property taxes lowered. Well, if that question doesn't say if we reduce property taxes, we have to reduce services, what services do you want reduced? I'm curious if that would actually affect the 30% saying, yes, I want to pay lower property taxes. Well, because the people I've talked to and explained to them what they do pay for, I says, well, I may not like it, but not only am I willing to pay it, I want more services. I want to increase my property taxes. It's all a matter of context. So I'm just thinking that, if someone says, well, see, 30% of the people want to have lower property taxes, but if they're not really informed on what they're getting in return for those.
Yeah, that one question that says, do you want to spend more, spend less on things like police and fire? You can see that, the vast majority of people want to spend the same, but there are people who say, I want you to spend less.
Okay. All right.
So
So in your opinion, and also the institution's opinion, they have a really good understanding of the fact that when they're answering that question saying lower, they understand there's going to be a reduction in property tax. Services.
well, that is actually some of the comments we get. People who say, I don't feel qualified to answer these questions because I don't know what lower, spend less. What does it mean if you say you're going to spend less in the fire department? What does it mean if you're going to spend less in animal control? I don't know what that means reduction of service would be. But yet there's still people whose gut instinct is spend more, spend less. And yes, there was 30% of the population saying that they would like to see a decrease in their property tax. But there also was a little bit of a jump of people who said, I want an increase this year.
Yeah.
So,
okay. All right. Thank you.
Do we have many of those sort of branching questions where if they select a certain answer, they get directed to a follow-up question? Maybe that could be something we look at for increase or decrease in property taxes, specifically call out what they would want an increase in taxes for.
yeah, we don't do that specifically in that sequence of questions, but that would be a way to address it.
Okay.
To make a final comment, I know I speak for all of us. That rating is on behalf of the staff. Those are our people delivering those services. And so I don't know, Steve, how you commend staff for that, but that's a report card.
It's a big
Report card on them. So very proud of our city staff delivering that quality of service.
Yeah, I appreciate that. They do a great job. We adheres to our our culture, and culture's, I think it's producing results. I appreciate it by our customers. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Susan. Appreciate it. All right, moving on to item number 31, resolution formalizing updated partner city agreement with Koshu City, Japan. And Council, I'm just thrilled to present this to you. And really the intent is just to memorialize in general what the purpose of our partner city relationship is. It's not committing us or the council to anything fiscally. It's not committing us to do anything. It's just more or less just saying this is kind of the intent. And the AIPCA board does a great job of taking the lead on that. But just thought it'd be nice to have something that would be council recognized and saying we agree with it. The one thing that I will bring to attention, we have not received an agreement, or we sent to the Koshu City City Council mayor a number of weeks ago. They have not yet responded one way or the other, and so I would just ask if there's some latitude that if there are some minor changes to the wording that they would like, that I'd have that ability to go ahead and make those changes. Certainly, if it's major, then we would certainly bring it back to council to officially adopt. And just a humorous note, Jeremy in Steve's office spent about a day and a half trying to find the original agreement that was because it was not attached to the minutes. Well, lo and behold, is hanging in the display cabinet.
Oh, sure.
So anyway, it was found, and we now have access to that. But that's it's just funny how sometimes it's right in front of you and you don't realize it. So anyway.
Is this agreement very similar to the original one, or what added benefits are?
Yeah, good question, Rachel. Honestly, it's very similar in nature. It's just what we added is just the business component. It's just trying to expand on that a little bit, and then also just casting a little broader vision of what we're trying to accomplish. So, and then also was brought in was that kind of memorializing some of the history, the 30-year history, and just that personal interactions would be not just with students or just for education purposes. It's going to be for business opportunities, cultural, and exchange of art. Good question. Any other questions? If not, I entertain a motion.
Would move we approve the partner city agreement.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 32, staff report on property maintenance code corresponding to changes, chapter 18, 22, and 29.
For this item, we're looking holistically across the municipal code as follow-up to the recently adopted changes to chapter 30, the public nuisance / property maintenance code requirements. In essence, what we believe as staff as the main issues that we need to reconcile with the discussion and the standards that were adopted from chapter 30 relate to common definitions related to vehicles, which then in turn relate to the issues of parking and storage, and then outdoor storage in general is what we really need to focus on here. So there's 3 chapters that we've brought forward. Chapter 29 is the zoning ordinance. Chapter 22 is streets and sidewalks, which is really the management of the right of way. And then chapter 18 is your parking enforcement ordinance within the municipal code. So our first issue that we have is that the zoning ordinance and the property maintenance code do not use the same terminology for defining vehicles, trailers, and junked vehicles. We use some different terminology. We gave you some definitions that I have to work with right now. They're similar. They mean slightly different things. We decided, and again, the parking code in chapter 18 doesn't have definitions necessarily either. It would really kind of default to the Iowa code definition of a vehicle, absent any other definitions. So our main issue that we want tonight is to ensure that we have definitions that are consistent across the municipal code, and then we can apply standards that are tailored to situations that we want to deal with. But we want to use a common vocabulary consistently, so we can communicate well with our customers and the citizens of the city. So for vehicle definition, we described 2 options for you here. We're definitely in favor as staff of option 1, which is to use those chapter 30 definitions that are very clearly a motor vehicle, a junked vehicle, and then a trailer. And by Iowa code, a trailer is also a vehicle. We broke it out for the convenience of people understanding what these terms really mean rather than burying them in a definition. So with that option 1, we think that's the best approach. It's consistent across the board. We would use that for other things related to chapter 22 and 18 if necessary. If you don't think that's the right way to go, we can tailor definitions in 29. Like, for example, right now we use a term inoperable vehicle. It's different than junked vehicle, but similar. If we need to go that route, we can. We would prefer to have consistent definitions. The second issue is around junk vehicle storage. If we adopt those junk vehicle definitions instead of inoperable vehicle standards that we have now, the issue starts to come up about what exactly are we expecting or intending to allow for, especially on residential properties, for the storage of inoperable and junked vehicles. The zoning ordinance uses a 72-hour time period frequently to distinguish between something that's temporary versus a longer term issue. So specifically for vehicles, 72 hours is the definition of parking. More than 72 hours is the definition of storage. It matters for the most part on commercial properties for how we look at different things, but it does also apply to residential properties. On residential properties, we don't allow outdoor storage of vehicles, trucks, equipment, trailers. All of these things are controlled through our trucks and equipment and outdoor storage standards in residential areas. Commercial and industrial are different. They have specific allowances. We work through that differently. The one nuance in the zoning ordinance is this term inoperable vehicle, which we describe in option 1 here, is we have a 30-day allowance. Someone can have an inoperable vehicle for 30 days on their property. Now, what's interesting is in the chapter 30, you have 48 hours of having a junked vehicle before it must be screened, meaning you can keep it on your driveway for 48 hours, but otherwise it has to be in a side or rear yard behind a fence, or it has to have some kind of covering on it. The zoning ordinance doesn't care if it's covered or not. It's just 30 days total if it's outdoors. So that's something we need to address is what exactly was council intending in terms of the storage of these junked vehicles? Was it meant to be limited to one or a defined number? Was it meant to be unlimited if it's in the rear yard, the way the property maintenance code indicates screening is valuable? Or do we really mean to keep that status quo of a 30-day allowance, but update the definitions to fit the terminology we're using in other places? So option 1 would really liberalize it and say you can have really storage of vehicles as long as it's screened. Option 1 would be the most permissive choice. Option 2 is effectively the status quo with using that 30-day limit for someone to store a junked vehicle. And then option 3 would be some kind of middle ground position where maybe you could keep it longer, but it has a defined limit on the number of junked vehicles you can have. It's not unlimited like option 1. I think for staff, I think option 2 or 3 is better than option 1. I think, again, in our residential properties, it's not a common issue. But again, we're trying not to have backyards and other parts of your property occupied by junk, things that are inoperable, not necessary, just occupying space in your rear yard and creating potential nuisances. So we think 2 or 3 is the best choice in that area.
Kelly, before we go on, I have a question. So what is what's driving this matter before us tonight? Just your recognition that there's inherent value in consistency, or have there been issues in your tenure where these issues have actually surfaced and this is a good opportunity now to create some consistency, or is it both?
It's a little, I can't speak. So I'm representing 3 chapters here. This is really representing 4 departments of the city.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't personally interact with the junked vehicle issue. Sarah in inspections does. So I can't give you a great example of the junk vehicle issues. She's the one that fields those complaints right now. So for me, I want to get consistent terminology so that we have a standard expectation when staff is dealing with a customer, whether there's someone making a complaint or somebody we're enforcing on. When we enforce on someone, they really want to understand what they're doing wrong. and make sure that it's fair what's being enforced on them. So clear language is really helpful for that. We do have, again, for junk vehicles, I really defer to Sarah on how frequently that's a complaint.
We do get complaints. On that.
You do. I think there's in total, we get complaints about storage of junk vehicles, storage of trailers, storage of equipment, exactly how and where that happens and for long. It does come up.
And then one more question. So a lot of times in statutes, you have a definition section. And so is the idea going to be that we're going to define these in the respective sections, or we're going to have a definition section that will apply throughout the code?
I think I'll defer from a style perspective to how the city attorney's office wants to do it. Do we want to cross-reference other codes or just put the definitions repeatedly in the different chapters? We didn't get to that detail. To me, and that's a style issue, whether it's cross-referenced or repeated within each chapter.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll defer to the city attorney on this. Someone who reads these things, it's nice to have a definition section and then it's consistent throughout the code, but I'll defer.
I would say in the zoning ordinance, because we have a lot of definitions, I was expecting to put it there. Maybe 22 and 18, which don't have definition sections, just have cross references.
Right.
But I think the zoning ordinance, you probably want it defined because you want to be able to page through and see what everything means.
Okay.
In the zoning ordinance.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Kelly, just to clarify, unregistered vehicles, is that in this definition?
The current definition of junk vehicle deals with unlicensed vehicles. That's in chapter 30.
So that'll remain then.
Yep. That's our intent.
Yep.
So then the next section, we didn't give options on home occupations. As we mentioned early on, there's a few sections that are cross-referenced in chapter 30 about zoning. They're not new standards, they're just cross-referenced. Home occupations, with the changes we adopted over a year ago, make it a very black or white situation. You can't get a permit for a home occupation. Either you comply or you do not. And we have some of the same storage and parking issues with home occupations as we do with other things. So we think it might just be beneficial to have a cross-reference to the home occupation standards, just to, again, have consistency of enforcement options that go along with those parking issues that can come up. So we're not asking to change any home occupation standards. We're just adding a cross-reference there. And then as we move towards the last zoning issue that we outlined for you, is the outdoor storage of garbage, recycling, and refuse containers. So I know there was a lot of conversation at the time of Chapter 30's adoption about what are we expecting for individual garbage toter removal and replacement and where it gets placed on a property. So there's nothing in the property maintenance code that addresses it. But because of that conversation, I wanted to highlight that currently the zoning ordinance requires all of them to be screened. It just doesn't deal with the duration of it being outside, really. So we want to clean that up. Either we suggest option 1, which would be to remove it or cause an exception to the standard for single family properties, that there's no expectation about garbage recycling container controls on a single family property. Or we threw out option 2 as trying to kind of be a middle ground of just, again, you don't have to build a screening enclosure for it or keep it necessarily behind your house or something that might be difficult, but to make sure you move it back towards the front of your house and give you a 72-hour window to do that in relation to collection times. So is it a perfect answer for everybody? No, but it probably deals with the bulk of situations around management of that type of container. So option 1 is, again, no standards basically. Option 2 is some expectation that staff could use in relation to garbage container management. So for streets and sidewalks, which is chapter 22, this one is a little unique in the sense that chapter 30 has really one statement about public nuisances of structures, fences, and buildings within the right of way. And then it uses the term I think otherwise is the term. So what does otherwise mean? As we go look back at streets and sidewalks, some of the things we want to control as a city are stated there, but it's through a permitting structure. And the legal department, the city attorney's office has advised staff that it would be beneficial from a code enforcement perspective to flip the model around and expressly state what's prohibited So it's easier to communicate what you can't do rather than say you don't have a permit to do what you're doing. So in total, what we would really be prohibiting is this bolded list here that includes the storage of dirt, rocks, materials, but also dumpster containers, pods, storage containers, other things that kind of encumber the right of way. Now, if you could get a temporary obstruction permit from Public Works, that's fine. We're not trying to deal with those things that you can get permits for, but we are trying to make it clear what is prohibited from the beginning. So Chapter 22 would just be edited to have a clear prohibition, but keep the permitting process if you can get one. And there's a little typo here in the section I noted for you, that the all unhitched trailer is just dangling there. That's meant to be moved under the parking code. It just didn't get there as we were adjusting the report. So the final thing that we want to address, again, in terms of storage and vehicles, is to deal with unhitched trailers. The parking code deals with, it has definitions around trucks and attached trailers. It doesn't deal with unhitched trailers except for semi-trucks, which are prohibited. The police department believes that unhitched trailers are a unique safety issue. There's no braking system. There's no controls if they are to be released or ran into can cause additional property damage. So they would like to have that be prohibited. That way parking enforcement can deal with ticketing, notification, removal, just like an abandoned vehicle or something else that's a nuisance on a public street. And then the final part of that, Chapter 18 really focuses solely on the term vehicle for the most part. It doesn't deal with construction equipment and equipment. We have had a number of complaints about the storage of equipment, which is an unlicensed thing. It's not meant to drive on a highway. It could be a lift. It could be a bobcat. It could be something else that's a piece of equipment. We want to make it clear that the parking code applies to those things as well. So right now, there's not a very good tie into the management of a storage of a piece of equipment. You would look at Chapter 22 and wonder, can I get a permit to store something there? Well, is it related to a construction project or not? We want to clean that up. So again, parking enforcement has a better model for what they can do with stuff that's on the street and treat things similarly across the city. So for all of those issues, you can see it's very much about storage and vehicles. And if we get to a common set of definitions, I think it's easier for all of us to walk through what's that going to mean in different situations. So that's our presentation on these issues.
And one more question on these unhitched trailers. My head is spinning a little bit tonight as I try to think through the law of unintended consequences. So a guy comes home from work, he pulls a work trailer, he's a contractor, and pulls up to his house, unhitches his trailer, and then goes to pick up his kids from soccer. We're going to prohibit that if we go forward with this, because I think there are a lot of these unhitched trailers that they come back each night and they're unhitched. I worry about the unintended consequences of that.
Well, it might be an intended consequence to stop it. So it might not be unintended. I think there's two ways to look at it. So as I understand it, this is from police, the interest is safety here. So whether it's for 10 minutes or for 10 days, they view unhitched trailers as a bigger safety issue than trailers that are hitched to vehicles. You could mitigate that possibly and think of it more along that abandoned vehicle process, where if it's there for a longer amount of time, there's a notice posted before they're ticketed or before they're towed. You could add that to the unhitched trailer. So your situation where it's just overnight, that might end up being exempt depending on how you write that standard, or police is suggesting that they just shouldn't be permitted at all.
I don't know. I think it's sort of a big deal. I have a lot of clients that are blue collar guys and they pull a trailer for their living. And if we say no on his trailers, that's going to impact a lot of people.
We get a lot of complaints about that in neighborhoods. The idea is that you park those in other areas, not in residential areas,
Where are they going to park them?
In industrial areas.
I mean,
Usually,
I just want to think about this.
Well, usually they're not working on those kind of construction people are not working on their own. They usually have an office or a place of business.
My guys are roofing houses and all kinds of things where that trailer is their office. I don't know. This one strikes me as one that there could be a lot of implications. I understand law enforcement may have one perspective, but I want to have a careful conversation about that one. If it was a long-term situation, then that sort of falls into a category. But if just some poor guy comes home and needs to, he doesn't want to drive around town with his trailer around because he's afraid that if he leaves his trailer there, then we're going to come up and tag him.
Well, it sounds like there needs to be maybe more information in terms of what is precipitating, like what law enforcement is seeing as issues.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from
You know, and the other thing too is that maybe there's a time limit in terms of 72 hours in terms of like, oh, it gives a weekend, for example, to allow that. But I don't know what the motivation is for it. Anyway. Gloria, do you have something you wanted to, you had a question you want to ask?
Well, yes, can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear
yes.
you very well.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, we can't hear you. Speak a little louder, Gloria.
I can't tell whether you can hear me or not. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I thought that was funny.
Okay, so my question actually sort of overlaps with Tim's question, and this is related to my interest in changing section 4 of chapter 29, which talks about boat trailers. And I'm wondering what the overlap is, if anything, between that concept of the boat trailer and the concept of the guy that, or well, whoever, the contractor, who brings home their trailer and wants to park it. Because right now we're forcing everybody to park out in the street unless they can park trailers alongside their house or behind their house. So Kelly, is there overlap in that definition of a trailer? And is that something that I would want to be trying to roll into my motion, which I hope to make regarding RVs and boat trailers?
I mean, I think there's some overlap, right? Like an unhitched boat trailer could be on the street. Tim's example is a work trailer, so there can be overlap. One thing that's interesting is if you're in home occupation, we don't let you keep this kind of equipment or trailers with your business at your house. So I'm struggling a little bit with the distinction of if you remotely work, why you get a benefit that a home business doesn't have for keeping these things here. And we can do it that way. That is how it's done now to some degree with how we manage hitched trailers to vehicles. It's the unhitched one, which is uniquely the safety issue that police has identified. So again, we can deal with it on a longer term basis rather than an immediate see it, ticket it kind of situation. It's police would like to have some more control over that. And then in terms of what Gloria is saying, if you allow for a trailer to be stored on the property, they do have a place to put it that's not on the street. And that relieves police from their concern of safety because it's now on a private property location.
All right, let's circle back and let's just take these one item at a time, and then we can just check these boxes. So the first one is vehicle definition. Is there any questions or comments on this one?
Staff's recommendation is what on this?
We would recommend to use the adopted Chapter 30 definitions in relation to vehicles, trailers, and junked vehicles. Option 1.
I'll move option 1.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Is there anyone I'm going to open a public comment on this particular item. Richard, I apologize. I skipped over you on the resident satisfaction survey. We will get back to you after this item is done. So is there anyone that's interested in addressing council on this particular topic, which is the property maintenance code? Okay, seeing none, we can go ahead and proceed with making motions then on these different items. So go ahead, Tim, on vehicle definition.
Move option 1.
Second.
Okay, and that is adding vehicle definitions to Chapter 29 based on Chapter 30 for those in the audience that don't have access to the staff report. Everyone understand the motion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, next item, junk vehicle storage. And Kelly, you said that you're staff would favor option 2 and or 3. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. Now with option 1, we're going to use the same terms as chapter 30. That conflicts, or maybe the expectation just kind of conflicts with zoning if you do nothing, because it seems to say if I just put a cover on it, I can keep it forever and I have no limits on number or storage type. Well, the zoning ordinance does at least restrict it to 30 days. I'm looking for a decision on whether it's meant to be open-ended. Option 2 keeps the current standards, or option 3 is some new definition with some other limitations attached. And I would favor 2 or 3.
Are you going to do public input?
Kelly, is it,
Oh, that was
Kelly, is it possible for us to amend option 2 to add a limit of 1 junked vehicle on a property?
We can. So that would mean that you get 1 for up to 30 days. Currently it is, currently it's unlimited number for up to 30 days. And I think
I would move.
Go ahead.
I'd move option 2 with the alteration that this be 1 junked vehicle allowed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Outdoor storage, garbage, recycling, and refuse containers. So it's my understanding that from your option 1, basically the screening would be would provide an exception for containers at individual at 1 and 2 family homes. In other words, the rollouts that you're going to take out there to.
Yep, just those standard toters, multifamily apartments, commercial, all that would still have to manage theirs with the zoning ordinance standards.
And 2 would require people to keep their
At least pull it back to that front setbacks. We're talking about typically the first 25 feet of someone's property. So you could keep it outside, keep it up by the house, keep it by the garage. It just couldn't be in that front setback.
So with option 1, would that say people could leave their garbage, their container at the curb all week?
It would not. So one thing that's important here is this is just dealing with the private property side. You are not going to be permitted to keep your garbage can in the street regardless, because that's the right of way. So
right away being basically from the side, from the back of the sidewalk.
The sidewalk forward. So you can't keep it on the apron of your driveway. You would at least have to pull it back to where your property line starts. If you adopt option 1, I can just pull it 12 feet back from the street and leave it right there on the driveway or in my front yard. Option 2 is going to make you pull it back at least, typically 25 feet.
Option 1 is really based on the discussion we had. With
Based on the
new
conversation, and no one
Yeah.
pointed out that technically the zoning ordinance doesn't allow it, but it hasn't been used that way.
I'll move on option 1.
All right, moved to second for option 1.
And again, we're not going to send staff out trying to with their measuring tape, trying to track this down. This is going to be done on a complaint basis, right?
Look at Steve. I would assume so.
Okay, complaints.
We're going to say something. All right, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Now we go to streets and sidewalk code amendments.
So we didn't give you specific options. Our goal is that bold sentence there is to be able to expressly prohibit those types of things.
Rocks, dirt, garbage, dumpster, storage containers stored in the right of way. That's what you're saying.
And that means from the sidewalk, the planter strip, and the street. One deficiency in the street and sidewalk code is it talks about streets and sidewalks, leaves the planter strip alone. So this would be the inclusive term of the whole right of way so that you can manage all of it.
So is there a time limit on when they can store? So for sake of discussion, someone's doing work in someone's backyard, front yard, and can they dump a load of dirt or rocks in the street and then that same day be moving them onto the site? Or is it something that, no, you can't do that at all? It has to be dumped on private property?
I think currently you can have a temporary a TOP to do that. There is some language about if you're doing a construction project, there's latitude in relation to that
Got it.
direct property if you're effectively immediately using it. So I think we're carrying that forward, which it's that storage of things for a longer period of time.
Okay.
Or not affiliated with a construction project.
I just don't see this being an issue. I'm trying to think of examples where I've seen this as a problem. So I suppose we could just do this proactively, but I don't feel like there's a huge problem with this.
Well, so a lot of it's prohibited now. It's just very difficult to explain the citation to someone for it. So that's why the city attorney's office is saying, can we repurpose the language to make it clear for how citations work?
Okay. Well, then I'd be happy to move that the bold language be included. Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Okay. That's my motion.
Well, there's 1, 2, 3 paragraphs each that has bold language. So I think
Sorry, the second paragraph in the Streets and Sidewalk Code Amendments section includes the express prohibition language. That's what I think you're referencing, Tim.
Right. Paragraph 2. So beginning, staff proposes that the streets and sidewalks, chapter 22, include an express prohibition and so on.
Catch that, Carly? That makes sense. Make sure you got it. So the motion would actually be that not just the.
You know where that is in the.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Got it. Correct. That becomes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And the last one has to do with trailers, storage equipment, and unhitched trailers within right-of-way within the parking code.
So just to be clear, the two new things would be the unhitched trailer and the equipment, to make that expressly clear. There may be other things that we have to deal with in 18 because of the references to chapter 29, like front yard parking is cross-referenced in 18. So that would just be cleanup language. The two new things would be related to unhitched trailers and equipment storage.
So, Mayor, your point is well taken. I think it would be valuable to hear from police. Could I just move to put this on a future agenda, and then we'll let the police explain it at that point?
If the council supports that, if you want.
So I'm initially wanting to have some kind of time frame rather than you leave it for 5 minutes to go to the grocery store and then you're going to get ticketed. So that falls in a ditch of craziness to me. But I also don't want to see the trailer there indefinitely. So a reasonableness standard. But we haven't had the chance to hear from police. So I would move that we put the matter of the all unhitched trailers on a future agenda.
Seconded. All right. Any comments? Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carried. Is there anything else under this parking code?
Mayor, this
Yeah.
is actually not the parking code amendment. This is actually going back to the vehicle definitions and chapter 29, section 4.
Right. Then I was just giving, I know you want to make a motion. Go ahead. Just give me a second here. I want to just clarify from Kelly. Is there anything else under this besides the motion that Gloria has referred to that you want to pick up?
I just want to understand, Tim's motion specifically said the trailers. Was equipment a go or is equipment deferred?
That's what I wanted to pick up.
My motion was just the unhitched trailers.
Just unhitched trailers, right?
So then that would, to me, leave open the question of inserting equipment into that same vehicle language that's in chapter 18.
So moved.
To do what?
Let's get
To insert the equipment language into that chapter 13.
So effectively, it would kind of treat it like a vehicle the same. If you abandon it and leave it behind, we can notice and have it removed or ticket you and tell you to remove it. That's the goal with that one.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
In
That was things like bobcats or like the little things that aren't technically vehicles because they don't have a license plate on them, but that are heavy equipment.
Yep.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed?
nay.
Motion carried. All right, Gloria.
I would move that we amend the zoning code, chapter 29, section 4, exception for RV and boat trailer parking, to permit on a property the parking of one RV, empty boat trailer, or boat trailered or not on an approved parking space.
I'll second.
Discussion?
This is a subject we've discussed in prior meetings. I think this would have very negative impacts on the neighborhoods. And I think if we're concerned about quality of life issues, parking an RV or a boat in the front of the building is counterproductive to the quality of that neighborhood and a step backwards in improvement of the quality of life in Ames.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And it seems to me, and Kelly, maybe you can comment on this. It seems like maybe best practices amongst a lot of communities I'm familiar with have similar restrictions as to what we had talked about prior. Is that true?
I would say most zoning ordinance control equipment, trailers, RVs to some degree.
Yeah.
I think it's the question of whether it's the front setback allowance or not. A lot of people prohibit them in general. Some prohibit them like we do behind the front setback, or make them be behind the front setback. It's a commonly addressed issue. There's slightly different answers depending on the community.
Okay. For me, this one is I guess I don't favor necessarily limiting RV size, but even so, the current system allows them to be parked on the street. And so if your argument is about appearances of them being parked right next to the house, but in the front yard, the fact that they're already allowed to be parked on the street makes that argument kind of null and void to me. Or, I mean, that doesn't, it's not a compelling argument for me, I guess I should say. So I'll be voting in favor.
I think it's also problematic to me because there are many people who do not have available side yard or backyard parking. And so they are being forced to park the RVs on the street if they want to bring them home and load them up and get ready to go on a trip. So I'd rather see those parked in the driveway than taking up parking on the street.
I worry that we're going to turn some of our neighborhoods into an RV park. And I think we've got possibilities for parking behind the building. I worry about the impacts on these neighborhoods. I think it's counterproductive.
So is the motion that one vehicle can be parked there year round? Or is it?
I'm not sure how the code currently reads on this.
So we have
My motion does not include a time limit on it, and it is one item per property.
Right. So the point is, you alluded to the fact people are bringing them home to get them loaded up, gives the implication that it's a short term, which is vastly different than allowing them to be parked year round. So that's why I was just trying to clarify.
Yes, sure. I agree with that, Mayor, but that's not the only reason people park their RVs. And we already have people parking RVs in their driveways and on other approved parking surfaces illegally. So it's really bringing code in line with what's being done around the city at this point, and I don't think it's being enforced.
the actual code language is attached
And
to the report.
honestly, the reason I'm making this motion is so it can go through the zoning code process and get public input through the regular process.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I was gonna say that the actual language is on page 8 of the council action form or staff report. Unfortunately, it's kind of one of those probably poorly written sections. The first half clearly says it prohibits all kinds of things, and then the second half says, but you're allowed to park these things. But parking, as we just found out, is for 72 hours or less, not for more than 72 hours, which kind of gets into that, what is this really trying to deal? Is it the storage or the parking issue, right? I don't think anybody complains about a parking of an RV to load it up. Is it there for months at a time? I think is the more obvious storage complaint.
But currently that 72-hour thing is in effect.
If that's what it really meant, yes. Yes, 72 hours would be the definition I have to live with right now.
Does that
All right,
change your perspective on
I'm
it?
fine with that aspect
That
of
it's only 72
the
hours.
code language.
Because currently they have to, if it's on the street, they'd have to move it periodically as well.
So Gloria, by that comment, you're saying the intent is to allow for the 72-hour parking of the RV somewhere on the property, just not behind the front setback, knowing that storage is
Well-
prohibited in general?
Yeah, it's assuming that that is part of the code already.
I think we would make it clearer through this process.
So I'm sorry, I'm confused now. You made it very clear that your motion did not have any time limit. Is that now an amendment to the motion, or you were just asking?
The way I understood that was
that I did not add any time limit to
Yep.
the motion.
Yep.
But if the code already specified a time limit, that would still be in effect. Now, Kelly, are you saying that that is not clear in the code?
I would make it clearer. I just can't trust the interchangeable use of storage and parking, so I would make it clearer if we address this section of what that means. That's why we're dealing with definitions. You can see the mess that they are in terms of what they're trying to accomplish.
But just to make it clear, it'd be no more than, it'd be less than 72 hours or 72 hours a
Yeah, so if we change nothing else, the code in the zoning ordinance would say after 72 hours, it is deemed storage, not parking.
Oh, I see.
Therefore prohibited.
Yes.
And you have to back it up out of your driveway and then pull back in
That's all they
in
have
a
to do.
slightly different configuration.
That
Maybe.
is the problem. That is the problem with these laws.
Yeah.
Everyone understand the
In
motion?
that case, I am not going to add anything to the motion that I made.
And so just to clarify, Gloria, you're okay with the RV being parked there 365?
No, it's 72
No,
hours.
now it's 72 hours. I'm, okay. It's fine. We should vote.
Well, then
Yeah. You're fine now, right?
Kelly, I apologize, final time here.
Yeah, I think the intent of the section is you can't store it on your property for more than 72 hours. You're allowed to park it there for 3 days at a time. You can't just cover it up, winterize it, and leave it in your driveway for the winter. That will not be permitted.
And
As
Kelly,
currently-
that 72 hours applies also to behind the house and alongside the house?
It does. It does by the way the words are written, yes.
So I know a lot of people are storing their trailers and RVs behind the house or next to the house for more than 72 hours currently.
I'm guessing
Is
no
that
one.
fair to say?
I would say that is true because I doubt anybody spent enough time reading through all the definitions of parking and storage to discern a difference until now.
Or even now.
Oh, boy.
Well, my intent was to allow everyone to be able to keep their boat or their RV, one per property, and not have a time limit on it. So I guess that's going to be the motion. I'm not putting the 72 hours on it.
72 hours. is
72
already
hours is
code.
in there anyway.
I can't hear you. You're all talking at the same time.
The 72-hour rule is
What-
already in code. So your motion would have to change that as well.
Because it goes from parking, the definitions parking is 72 hours, and it becomes storage once it goes to hour 73.
Correct.
So if you want to allow someone to not only just park, but store a vehicle in the front yard of the house, in front of the house, as you described, then there needs to be other changes to the ordinance, or your motion has to pick that up. Is that correct, Kelly?
I think so. I know it hasn't been enforced that way, but
So
that's what the words say.
This is my dilemma. Right now, I think there are many people in town who are storing, not just parking, RVs and boats behind the house or next to the house.
Okay, so if you want to continue that, all you have to do is the motion would be you allow one vehicle to park on the driveway for less than 72 hours. Everything else can stay unlimited on the side or rear yard.
Right.
You would split it with parking and storage in the description.
You're changing the law to recognize that they are storing. You're going to allow storage behind, not
Yes.
Next
not
to.
the side yard,
Whatever it is now.
whatever it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right now it's you can't do it at 72 hours, but you're going to allow that unlimited. Right, side yard and rear yard, it's allowed. It'll be allowed unlimited on the driveway, one vehicle for 72 hours, or one
In front of the house, whatever.
in front of. Well, on an approved, on
And unapproved. Yeah.
an approved parking spot in the front yard.
All right, there's a motion made and it's been seconded as it stands. Unless there's an amendment, it's good.
Now, wait a minute, I don't even know what has been approved here.
Right.
Is what Steve is saying what you think that I have moved?
I'm entirely not sure, actually.
So
Yeah.
what
I-
is the?
Yeah, you'd have to
what's the
withdraw.
Make a
current
new
motion? What's the current motion? Okay.
I withdraw the motion and what do you need from me now? I agree with Steve's proposal to split this, but to what extent do I need to carve out that language in the motion?
It would seem to me that if you're interested in allowing people to park on approved surface in front of the house, that would be allowed for up to 72 hours and on the, for one, and on the side behind the front of the house and in the rear yard for unlimited for
Allow for the storage of one
vehicle.
For an unlimited time frame.
Yeah, one that you
Storage.
define, the RV, boat, trailer, boat, whatever. Is that?
Yep, that's what Steve said.
So then the clarification I would need is, are you all talking about one stored and one parked? Because I'm just talking about one total.
How about one either stored beside or behind or parked?
It's just too much. We're not that fine grained.
Yeah.
Right. If we're talking about allowing something to be for 3 days in the driveway, does it matter if there's something else parked in the
Yeah,
backyard?
no, just let them be both.
There's
Yeah,
not,
I agree.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not
Okay,
related.
so then I would agree to that motion that we allow one RV, empty boat, trailered or not, to be parked in the drive or on any approved parking surface or in front of the house for up to 72 hours. And that one other RV, boat, etc., can be stored behind the house or alongside the house
On an approved parking surface.
on an approved parking surface.
Beyond 72 hours.
Yes, I think
Beyond 72 hours. That's
Yeah.
storing though, right?
Correct,
So-
correct.
That becomes-
Yeah, he'll take care of the wording. Is there a sec?
I still second.
All right, let's move second. Carly, if you get this one correct, you should get a gold star on your report card.
This is what happens when you try to work out the language very carefully before the meeting and it all goes awry.
All right. Does everyone understand the motion? Kelly, you have 10.
Absolutely.
Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried.
This did come up earlier. We didn't say put this in the work plan. This is something I feel is prioritized because you have Chapter 30 going to effect on January 1st. We want as much of this to be all consistent. So this is something staff's going to jump on right away as a prioritized project. It'll be back to you before the end of the year. Okay.
All right. We catch everything that you wanted. Okay.
We're good.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
That was funny.
All right. Richard, I'm sorry. I apologize. I should have opened up public input on the resident satisfaction survey. If you would like to offer some comments back on item number 30, you're welcome to do so.
It's like one of the things that I feel rather strongly about was the decorum thing that you decided to allow signs in there. And I had walked out of my apartment that morning without carrying my signs, and I went over to NAMI, and I made a sign that was brand new. It's like I remember talking a little bit about it that evening, but it's like they wouldn't let me walk out of NAMI carrying that sign, and they threw it in the trash. And you know, and I don't know. It's like I might be crazy. I am. I've been called crazy since I was a 4-year-old kid. But it's like I was a little bit hurt by some of the things that have been going on about me. That it's like I want to. It's partly that I feel like I have to explain everything. And it's like you have other things that are more important to do than to listen to me. But it's like I go around asking people, can I do everything in my power to make you happy? You know, and your happiness is important to me. And it's like, can I love and honor you today? And things like that. And it's on my buttons, you know, and I mean it to people, but it's like, I feel like I don't get an awful lot of support, as it were. And I expected some more support from places like NAMI, that they would not tear my sign up. And I don't know if that survey thing dealt with things that, I mean, they can throw me in the trash. They can just plain kill me. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to anybody else. You know, it's like,
Thank you. All right. We'll move on to item number 33.
Council had moved earlier this year to place this on an agenda, and I was not in a big hurry about it because it really dealt with the holidays, but the holidays are approaching. So, excuse me, for a long time on Tom Evans Plaza, the Chamber has had a display during the holiday season. It used to be a Christmas tree, and then there's a, I think, 7-foot tall snowflake that they put up now. And that was never an issue until last year, when we had an organization request to put up a 9-foot tall menorah there, would be lit over the Hanukkah season. We looked into that at the time because, your sort of the initial reaction is, oh, well, establishment clause of the First Amendment, you can't establish a religion. The government shouldn't be promoting a religion. But it's actually a different part of the First Amendment. It's the free speech clause that comes into play because under the case law, once you've established a what's called a public forum, the government has established a public forum, then you have to let anyone in there. Basically, you can't engage in discrimination on the basis of content. So we looked into that. We advised the council that we had to let the menorah go up, and we did. The issue then becomes tricky because once we've established this public forum, that means that, again, we can't discriminate on the basis of content, which means if a group comes with a symbol that a lot of people consider offensive and wants to put it up, then we have no choice but to allow that. So that's something to be concerned about and something to think about. At this point, we've only established Tom Evans Plaza as a public forum, not the rest of the city property, but so we're proposing here just a general policy that to not allow ongoing displays, unattended displays to be placed on city property any time of the year, any city property. And we can do that under First Amendment law. We can simply decide not to allow any displays. Just because we had a public forum doesn't mean that we have to always keep the public forum. So we can eliminate the public forum and then move on. So anyway, that's it in a nutshell. And if anyone has any questions or want to discuss, it'd be great.
Are there any other areas that would fall in the definition of a public forum within the city, or is this the only one?
I can't think of any other. There are certainly places where we rent out, facilities for gatherings and that sort of thing. But I don't. That's not really the same thing as a public forum. This is like, hey, we're allowing a group to put up a display during the holiday season, and then we really can't say no to other groups. But I don't think we've established anything as a public forum other than Tom Evans Plaza at this point.
What about the public library?
Yeah.
Are there areas there? So sometimes I get emails from people that are offended by displays at the entryway going in the library. If we made that a public forum, do we have the ability to limit that?
I believe those displays are the library's displays, we can put up our own symbols or whatever. I mean, if we had a giant snowflake, we could put it up in Tom Evans Plaza. It's just that we've allowed another group to do so. But I don't think the library, and I don't know for sure what the library does, but as far as I know, I don't think they allow outside groups to put displays in.
So that's the criteria. It's an outside group.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So-
City-owned displays are fine and are allowed. We had a question behind the scenes about the street lights and the snowflakes on the street lights. That's really a joint program, but it's really the city's street lights and the city's the snowflakes are, city provided some funding for the snowflakes. Some of them are, I believe they're actually owned by the chamber or Main Street, and they're stored in the city facility, and off season, the city puts them up, so I view that as a joint project of the city, with Main Street or chamber. And it's really the city's speech in that sense, different than Tom Evans Plaza, where it's clearly the city owns this and we're allowing an outside group, we've given them permission to put up the snowflake.
So for like flags being put up at the Ames Cemetery on Veterans Day or Memorial Day, that's typically done by an outside group like Boy Scouts or Patriotic Council. Would that be considered a display?
No, it wouldn't, because one difference there is that the cemetery plots are actually owned by the family of the deceased, and we actually issue a deed to them for those plots. So really, I had a question from Keith about that, because the wreaths, there's a group that puts wreaths on the graves of veterans, but they're actually placing those on private property because we've issued a deed for that cemetery spot.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Even though, not to get too deep in the weeds, but your point is interesting. Is the flags are actually put along the road, which is probably city-owned property. The deeds are just for the plots themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really getting into the weeds.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is.
Just wouldn't wanna
it just seemed like
prevent something.
it would seem like American flags would be something that would be. It's not seasonal. It's basically it's out of anyway.
Yeah.
All they have to do is get our ownership of it, right? So if there is a group that does it, all they would have to do is arrange to transfer it to us to the brief time it would be there,
Right.
and then not. And so that's a pretty, and when we would approve or not approve it, but that would be the
That's a good
workaround.
point.
Pretty easy
That's good.
workaround.
Good point.
Yeah.
Like with the chamber snowflake, right? If they were to be like, city will gift you this snowflake, then
Yeah. Honestly, if the chamber gave us the snowflake, we could put the snowflake up there.
exactly.
And
Okay.
so,
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Open up public input. Does anyone want to address council? You've only been waiting for almost 3 hours, so thank you for waiting patiently, Crystal.
So Crystal Davis, Director, Ames Main Street, and exactly my thoughts, Bronwyn. We are saddened about the possibility of not being able to put up our snowflake. The history of that is the holiday tree always ran away. It's very windy in downtown Ames. It was very hard to keep upright. The decorations were always crazy. And we also thought that maybe going to what we had perceived as a non-religious symbol of a snowflake would be appropriate to kick off a retail event, as well as partner with what is already on the light poles, which is currently snowflakes that we do help maintain. So that was our idea, that it would just be a seasonal, not like holiday enhancement, but as a winter enhancement that would add beauty to downtown Ames, as well as be used for a retail kickoff. So we have actually thought about that. And so I would offer for consideration, is there a possibility or consideration that a snowflake could be given to the city for ownership to be used in partnership when the snowflakes are up on the light poles? And when the light poles snowflakes come down, the other snowflake comes down as well. So thank you.
And if it's, thank you. Anybody else? Close public comment. Mark, so the Boy Scouts, come out and provide labor, to erect and take down all the flags, right? So could other parties help put up city-owned items? For example, like if the snowflake, for sake of example, if the city owns it, does the city have to install it, or can volunteers come forward and say, we'd like to help put that up?
we could have volunteers install it.
Okay.
That'd be acceptable.
Okay. All right. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, entertain a motion.
Move alternative one.
Second.
Okay. Those in favor of the motion, please say. Let's see. So, which would be the resolution approving policy that no ongoing displays other than city-owned displays will be allowed on city property, with the exception of temporary displays in conjunction with the rally or gathering of people.
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Crystal.
So, but wait, we need
But wait,
city
there's more.
approval on you drafting a bill of sale for the snowflake.
Was it $0?
Um,
Why can we gift
I don't know, Steve, I mean, someone,
Gift it?
they can give it to it. I don't think we need the council approval to receive it.
Receive it.
So, yeah. So, okay.
Excellent.
I think this, I can't predict that, whether we will be sued or not by, that may still happen. I think we will win if we are sued, but over this, if another group wants to put up a display this year. But we'll see.
That's encouraging.
All right. We'll move on to item number 34, Bobcat S7700 skid steer. Any,
You've actually approved this before. There was a typo. So we're adjusting the dollar amount. That's all you're doing. You have to vote to reconsider it, and then approve the actual dollar, the new dollar amount.
So we can't do that kind of stuff in a consent agenda?
Move to reconsider? No.
Second.
so there's been a motion made to reconsider resolution number 23-509. Is there's a second?
Second. Oh, sorry.
Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Sorry. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Entertain a motion on resolution awarding the purchase of Bobcat S7700 skid steer to Bobcat of Ames, Iowa, in the amount of $51,704.13.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right, we'll just move on to 2 items of disposition of communication to council. First is an email from Max Shelley regarding glass and bottle recycling. And
I'm not sure.
that we have any control over that.
Right.
Could we get just a memo from staff on our current?
Maybe this is not what he asked for, though. I think he's complaining about collecting the fees, and
Oh, I see. I
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
It's really
Sure.
high.
they're making money off the deal.
Yeah.
We don't control any of that.
Right. Sure. That.
Well, and the fact that Hy-Vee is shut down,
Yeah, I can't
Receiving
control
it.
that.
that really
There is a private sector group out there doing it. It may not be as convenient as people would like, obviously.
just have staff respond back and explain
The situation. Yeah.
their motion for staff to respond to the email.
I move that there be a staff response to the email.
For a second,
Second.
those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. And then Kelly, give us a.
You want to study these because we're going to have some that we're working on. Some are on our parking lot. You know, there were projects a long time ago you placed a parking lot. And then more recently, there's 12 or so projects you assigned to us more recently. So we're going to need some prioritization from you all.
All right. So that's just for our review. All right. We will move into council comments. Gloria?
None tonight.
Thank you. Tim?
We've had a couple people in the public forum express suggestions about the way in which we do our streets. And I'm actually really encouraged, something I didn't know before I came on council, just the way in which we process requests and suggestions. And just a reminder, if people have suggestions about ways we can make Ames a better place, submitting that suggestion to the city council, and then if it gets support and council comments, it moves on. It's a little harder to take ideas that are expressed in the public forum. It's easier for us if we have those suggestions in writing and we work with it. We have a very much a data-driven process. We have a great city engineer, and so we welcome those suggestions. And then secondly, our focus is on Ames, but we do not live in a vacuum, and the events going on in Israel are heavy on many people's hearts. Over 1,000 people, as President Biden said today, slaughtered and in a very heinous way. Command our attention. There are many people who are impacted, even in Ames, and are in fear for loved ones. So our condolences, and hopefully there'll be a resolution soon. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ida?
Just wanted to mention that Iowa State had a couple of events last week that I think several of us were able to attend for Dr. Patterson out at the Vet Med Laboratory. The hall naming for him, and then the Jack Trice ceremony on Sunday. So very nice events, very well attended, and very moving. So it was nice to see the city invited to those and to have a chance to participate.
Nothing for me.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Jeff,
I've got a couple things
by the
actually.
way, you're dressed very, very
Yeah.
smartly. over
Thank
there.
you. I appreciate that. I thought I started feeling left out because everyone else has suits and nice stuff. So might as well bring the spiff tonight. But so 2 weeks from tomorrow, October 25th, we are having our joint city council meeting that we have every semester. So make sure to put that on your calendars. That's going to be at the MU. And this Friday, I'm drafting a agenda for that. So I was just curious, is there anything council would want on that particular
I
agenda?
didn't have mine. Do we-
I didn't, I apologize. I didn't have this on our calendar.
Neither,
Oh,
Neither, I've got
I
it.
didn't, but I just did.
Okay, there we go. Okay,
What time?
When is it?
Yeah.
6 p.m. 6 p.m.
And which date again?
on
25th.
Wednesday, October.
Wednesday.
Yeah, we had another meeting too.
Well, we can always reschedule it to another.
No,
meeting
that's-
as well.
Who can make that? Tim, are you in?
I'm not sure.
Nita?
I'm not sure. Bronwyn looks like
I can.
I should be able to.
Oh, you.
I think so.
Wednesday.
I can make it.
You don't need to see it. We got another meeting.
So it's
Gloria,
Wednesday the
it's
25th.
Wednesday, October 25th at 6 p.m. Are you
Thank you.
available?
Hang on just a sec here.
I will make every effort. I think I-
Yes.
Okay. Let's go ahead.
Sounds
I
good.
mean, if others can try and make it, that'd be great.
Yeah.
If we can get at least, 4 people, and I can make it, let's move forward with it.
Sounds
Actually, I was going to ask you about that because
yeah.
we hadn't heard anything. I know you've had a lot of shifting.
Yeah, no, I only learned about it a couple days ago that we had
That'll
to
work.
have
Okay,
it. So
so-
I would have told you guys sooner. otherwise.
So
um,
if we leave it this way, that if people have some things they would like to be put on the agenda, maybe by the end of next week,
100%. You can.
could they email them
me,
to Jeff? And then maybe you and I could connect in the next few days and just talk through some things and
100%.
go from there. That works good.
I think that.
And what else?
Me and a couple students have been working on this thing we call the Ames Safe Word Project, and we've been talking to a couple local bars, and we're fixing on rolling out a couple posters and stuff like that, which is pretty exciting. Are you familiar with what like an angel shot is? So it's sort of like a safe word, if say for instance you're in a bar and you're like very, very intoxicated and you can't quite get the help you need yourself, you go up to the bar and you ask the bartender for an angel shot, and then they would give you like the respective help that you need based on the situation. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to roll out a bunch of posters and just stuff detailing like what an angel shot is, so that more people can be aware that this is a resource they can go to when they go out to the bars, especially since it's a college town and half the people who go here probably go to the bars on the weekends. So we've been rolling those out, and hopefully by the end of the month, every local bar named should have those little posters in the bathrooms. So it's pretty exciting. And then I'm looking for people actively for various commissions. I know we need a couple people on asset, I believe. So I've been reaching out to a couple students, and I've
From the student government appointee, you mean?
yeah. So I've been reaching out to people in student government, trying to gauge interest, and I think I might have a couple people. So I'll be getting those people in contact. That's it for me.
Very nice.
Well, I just want to restate again, we have an exciting opportunity Monday and Tuesday with this contingent coming over from Koshu City. And I know many of you have agreed you're going to be able to participate in some level or sometime. And so I hope you find it as rewarding and enriching, as Cindy mentioned, as we did, when we went over, in June. So looking forward to that. And the city manager and I also met with the superintendent and the president of the school board, had some very good dialogue in terms of building partnership and strategic relationships with the school district. So we'll we talked about a whole bunch of different points. I won't go over them tonight, but that'd be good for. I should probably write a quick memo to you guys just talk about what some of the points are we talked about, just to give you an update. But very encouraging, and so anyway, with that, Mr. Lambert, does the city council have legal standing to go into closed session?
Yes, you do. Iowa Code Section 21.51C allows the council to go into closed session to consider matters in litigation or pending litigation or
Okay.
threatened litigation.
Thank you. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Jeff, thank you.
Yes, so much.
Right, we are back in open session. Is there a motion relative to the topic discussed during closed session?
I would move that we proceed with the action discussed in closed session.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Entertain motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned.